Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Evgeni.
Hi, hello, I am Argent, and
Hello.
I have a very brief show and tell for you today.
Okay.
It is not topical at all.
Okay, great. I mean, when is it ever topical?
Well, I mean, I showed like Mistborn things on a Mistborn episode once.
Okay.
I got this scotch at this point like a couple of months back. This is the Abrelur Abonad. It is a cask strength, so it's like 61.2% alcohol, and it is potent, but oh boy, is it delicious! Like it was about $80, $90 when I got it. So worth.
Mm-hmm. Also joining us is Joshua. What's up?
Hi, I'm jofwu on the forums and Discord, and I've got this nice cup of water.
Nice. I
Highly
don't know why
recommend.
you're suddenly pixely, but of course when we start, Discord's like, you know?
Have you given up on jofwu? Have you embraced the jofwu now?
I don't know what I've embraced.
Well, maybe you've embraced Mr. Marvin here with his excellent mask. This is some excellent cosplay here.
Hallo, ich bin Paleo. Ich habe heute mal meine Maske aufgezogen. Ich hoffe, das stört niemanden, wenn ihr mich so seht.
Aha.
Moment, versteht ihr mich gerade überhaupt? Ich glaube nicht, ne? Oh, ich muss mal kurz... Kleiner Moment. So.
Oh, putting on that medallion there?
Mein Medaillon mal. So. Do you understand me now? I just tapped something.
Yeah,
I just tapped connection. So.
You still have an accent, though.
Yeah, that is...
Well, that is
unfortunately, it doesn't change. I only can speak the language. Or you can understand me now, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That is consistent.
It's consistent. Oh, that's funny. Also joining us, new Shardcast, which is especially funny because we're recording this so much later than this is airing, is Payden. What's up?
Hey there, I'm Payden, better known as Otto Didact, and my metal minds are full of useless information and dumb jokes. So
And you make maps.
happy to be here. And I make maps.
Yeah, he makes some great Coppermine maps, and they're pretty spiffy.
They are great, aren't they?
I mean, they are really cool. So basically, you and Joff were like, you know, how do we get the latitude and longitude right on the Roshar map and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
We spent way too much time on that.
Yeah,
Way too much.
If people are not familiar with your maps, Otto, what's a good page they can go to and take a look and see the work that you do?
Oh, great question. The Reshi Isles one is pretty good.
cool.
I find.
I will put it on screen later in post.
Oh,
Awesome.
that'd be smart.
Yeah, that's why they pay me the big bucks. We're all getting paid the big bucks over here for the amount of effort that we do. Oh yeah. Support us on Patreon. No.
Pay us the big bucks.
Pay us the big bucks, please. And I am Chaos. And today, everyone, if you couldn't tell from Marvin's masks, we are talking about the Southern Scadrians.
The 1990 movie, The Mask.
Yes. Starring Jim Carrey. You have to talk
Beautiful.
like him the entire time.
Smoking.
I honestly
With
don't remember anything about
bronze.
that.
It was a thing.
Yeah, that movie is in my mind as being very aggressively 90s.
So we do not have to talk about that movie. I will take the mask off.
Okay, great.
I'm not going to say you
You don't want to wear the mask the whole time?
Yep.
Okay,
Oh,
Let's
you
do-
denier of masks.
you're a denier of masks. Okay, welcome. Welcome back to the north. Bands of
That's-
Mourning spoilers, by the way. Just, you know.
I mean, you could probably tell from the video titles.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to talk about bands. We're going to need to talk about Rhythm of War as well. We might.
Secret History is
Bands,
Secret History is
Secret
the bigger-
History,
Elantris.
All the things.
honestly, all the things. It's really, yeah.
Probably not.
The spoiler situation with bands and secret history is so like
Weird,
convoluted and weird because they essentially sort of spoil each other, and it's.
I think it's good to do bands and secret history. I've always been on that train, personally.
Yeah.
It's going to be weird when you have Lost Metal and it's like, do you read 3
That's
Era 2
true.
books
Yeah,
and then go secret history and then
weird.
back?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
They ought to. I think they ought to bundle secret history with bands. Honestly, just like have it at the end or something.
It's a big one, though.
Yeah, that's a beefy novella. Well, I guess all the Cosmere stuff because, well, you'll see. So I'm sorry, but we're gonna talk about the Southern Scadrians. And fun fact: if you are newer to the fandom, you might not know that we have actually known that something's going on the South Pole since 2008. Because there are some references in the annotations about it's like, oh, I haven't said what happened in the South Pole, but all the Final Empire stuff's on the North Pole and stuff.
I actually want to elaborate on something you said before, because I think a lot of people in the fandom, especially newer people in the fandom, don't know about the annotations.
Yes, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are one of these people, if you don't know what we're talking about, during Brandon's kind of earlier years, so throughout the Mistborn Era 1 books, throughout Warbreaker and Elantris,
all those.
a little bit Alloy, a little bit Way of Kings.
Yeah.
Brandon would do a thing where once a book was out, he would publish chapter by chapter of his thoughts, essentially a director's like commentary on what's happening there. And he would often reveal things that couldn't fit well into the book, such as the information about the Southern Scadrians.
Human the Colossus lore. If you want Human the Colossus lore, he goes on just like, here's this story, and here's this guy, and he's in the Birdlands and things. It's like, oh, that's fun.
So you can read those on his website. I don't know where exactly, but they are
I'll put a link in the description. They're also on Arcanum if you don't like link rot. They'll be in the description. Sometimes Brandon's website changed and maybe all of the links to the annotations break. That
maybe, who knows?
That's never happened before, except the times that it did. But they're very interesting. What he did was when a book's just about ready to be done, there's a step called the copy edit where someone from the publisher goes through and does all typographical work. And in the olden days, Brandon had he did not have Peter to do this for him, so he had to do that, and it is long work. And he basically was rereading the book, and so that's when he wrote the annotations. But once he had Peter, Peter does that because Peter, knows how things should be formatted, and just asks Brandon questions if he's not sure. And so Brandon doesn't need to do that, so he can spend more time writing, which we kind of want. But I do kind of miss the annotations because the annotations have some pretty sweet lore, especially for Mistborn Era 1.
Yeah, when we were in the preview chapters of Rhythm of War, that lead up.
Oh, that was fun too. Yeah, it's the same thing.
He was doing something very similar, right? He was posting commentaries, and he did that for Dawnshard as well. And I tried to
slightly less for Dawnshard. It's just Dawnshard's out. I'm gonna blab about it.
it was more of an AMA. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I tried to get him to do maybe per part annotations for Rhythm of War, and he thought about it, but it obviously never happened.
Well, like many things Brandon wants to do, he does not have infinite time. So yeah, that's fine. But yeah, so he referenced these in the annotations. In our very first, well, not our very first, but after Hero of Ages came out, there were people asking about things on the South Pole. Someone was like, hey, is there anything on the other side of the planet, or is it just on one side? And Brandon's like, there is life. And then our good old friend Matt Comatose asked way back in 2008 about them too. And Brandon said, oh, the people out in the south are not dead. Rashek was aware of them, and he placed them as a reserve. He wanted a control group in case his changes to genetics with humanity caused serious trouble. And so he found a way other than changing them genetically. According to this web, that's kind of weird. That's what the web says. Details might be slightly different. To help them survive in the world, and they were created by rune and preservation. They do have seeds of the metallic arts like everyone else, but Allomancers would be very rare, and Mistborn, unheard of. And remember, what Rashek did was, because he did all this movement and moved the sun closer, he created the ash mounts, and, in the north, he created all these microbes and, changes to humanity to deal with the ash. But in the south, he didn't do that. I still think the ash would get to the south, billowing tons of ash, but, whatevs.
Well, it's magical ash.
There's another annotation that the ash is slightly magnetic, and and the magnetic North Pole now is at Luthadel, and so it's weird.
Obviously, Scadrial has no trade winds or anything like that.
Yeah, it's nothing.
That's got to be it. Can we talk about the geography of it for just a sec?
Sure, yeah. Yes.
Yep.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
The stereotypes.
Because I just think, people coming in, might be a little bit confused about it. I know that I was until last night a little bit confused about how it actually works. No, because it's kind of unclear, because the maps that we have, right, of the Elendel Basin and surrounds, right, they don't show the edges of that continent at all.
Yes. Right.
And so I was like, are there two separate continents, and one is at the North Pole and one is at the South Pole, and it's just all ocean in the middle, or do they connect somehow, that sort of thing. So there are, on Scadrial, right, the concept is that all of the stories that we've seen take place at the North Pole of the planet, but that there is a continent, a separate continent, at the South Pole, because Brandon frequently refers to it in the WOBs as the Southern Continent specifically, not just the South Pole or where the Southerners live, sort of thing.
And he says it people ask about Roshar if that's the only main landmass, and he's like, Roshar is the only main landmass, but on Scadrial it is not like that. So definitely multiple continents.
Yeah.
And another thing that confuses me is that it's the magnetic North Pole and South Pole that he's talking about. They're not at the geographic North and South Pole, because they have relatively normal-ish seasons, and the sun is not up all year during the summer and down during the winter. They're at a low enough latitude that the sun is kind of normal-ish.
There's a huge annotation about Brandon talking about what Rashek did, and at the end he's like, it's sophisticated geography and astrophysics, and I'm out of my element. So if there's a mistake in my reasoning, that's why I write fantasy and not SF. Which is funny. Yeah, so 2 poles. Yeah, it is weird that it's the magnetic, because you think that it would need to be the geographic. But whatever.
Especially considering that the reason there was no travel between the North and the South was in large because the world was burning between them, and so
it was just total desert.
Yeah, and so you would expect the North and the South continents to be at roughly the geographic North and South poles, and then the region near the equator that's getting pummeled by the sun would be like the burn lands and the boiling oceans and all of that stuff, but apparently not quite. So
so he talks about how the seas near the equator, right, would boil. They had stories, right, of people trying to go that far south, and it's so hot because Rashek, the Lord Ruler, moved the whole planet closer to the sun, right? And so the seas near the equator would boil, and so you couldn't get through there because of the heat and whatnot. And
which is exactly how it would work in exoplanets if you're not in the right area. Those oceans would be boiled.
And additionally, as you had made mention of, right, when he moved the Well of Ascension, it also moved the magnetic North Pole down to the lower latitude that Joff was talking about, where so they can have like a normal day-night cycle and whatever. And it says in that annotation that it's actually cooler at that latitude because of the ash and the magnetic properties of the magnetosphere of Scadrial or whatever that make it cooler there than at the physical North Pole, which we're having fun. This is
the original Terrace Mountains then must have been close to the geographic North Pole.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because that's where the original location of the well was.
Correct.
And then all of that shifted down and he flattened the mountains.
Yes.
And put new mountains up.
And then put new mountains up even further north.
It's like, that's Terrace now. There you go.
Yeah. Rashek, you...
I don't want to emphasize, like, he didn't have to move the North Pole like so far down on latitude. Like, you could be fairly high up as long as they're like below the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
It can't be that high up because if the Terrace Mountains now are the new Terrace Mountains still are close to the North Pole, like they are within the final empire, at the edge of the final empire, so it's not that far off from the.
And he does say that the final empire's area is actually pretty small, but But obviously, Harmony reshifted everything around. You can actually fit the final empire map and the Elendil Basin map. There's a nice little part where they still match the coastlines, but
neat. I haven't tried that.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, it's totally there. Which honestly is a little weird considering he shifted the entire crust and flattened mountains. So that's a little odd. But
it makes me think
he also moved individual. He also moved individual caverns, right? Like just kind of through the earth to be next to each other.
Yeah, I mean, Harmony can do whatever he wants. He clearly the basin is not a natural thing, so it's probably not. It's definitely not exactly the same. So he probably just made it. So it's like, oh well, the landscape's kind of like what you knew, but now it's different ecology.
Not death and ash, fire.
And the reason the Southerners survived is that there were, I guess, just different adaptations, and I don't understand how Brandon's like, oh, it wasn't a genetic modification, because clearly we see the Southerners, they are like, wow, normal temperate weather is way too cold and we will die. Just like straight up die, like just regular old spring weather, they'll die.
So that bothers me a little bit. The way I interpret it, I guess, is that the Lord Ruler, he wanted to keep them as a control, but he also probably like expected them to die. Like he didn't know that they would survive. So he split the two groups, put one in the south, one in the north. In the north, he did the ash mounts, and he had to adjust their biology to accommodate the ash mounts, but they were able to live in more like normal temperatures. Yeah. I'm assuming the Southerners, like they lived in an extremely hot climate. Yeah. And maybe they were going to die that way, but at least he had like two options going so that if the one in the north didn't work out, maybe the other ones would survive, and they did. So it kind of it suggests that the ones in the north could have survived anyways, right? But without the ash mounts and all the modifications. But they would have been more like the Southern, right? A different climate than he was aiming for.
Maybe he also just had the Southerners sort of as a genetic template. So like if he messed anything up in the north, he could still go, okay, I can reset them to the southern state now and start over there. So it's not necessarily that he would have gone with the Southerners anyway. It was more just that they were a backup that he could have like restored in case anything went wrong in the north, but he would still, I think, have worked in the north because he wanted to be close to the well too, in case or when it refilled. So
that was the impression that I got too, was that they were sort of like a backup, like you said.
Yeah,
but
do we know, Joff? Do we know, like, were the Southerners down there in classical Scadrial times, like before his ascension, or did they get split off, like, and put there?
That's a good question. That was not. We don't know anything about that. We don't know anything about the specifics on how that happened.
Interesting.
I mean, I imagine there would still have been the same continent that Sazed remade, right? And he probably just grabbed a group that maybe in classical Scadrial they didn't really know about, so they were separated culturally from the others, and maybe just moved them there because Rashek's like, well, I mean, I'm doing this stuff. But
yeah, hard to say either way, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sure seems like in the current time, like there was very little intermingling between the two. So I do think even in classical Scadrial, they would have been pretty separate.
Yeah.
Although there are ruin and preservation things in lore, like, but that would permeate the whole planet, I guess.
Yeah.
I imagine that they were connected with, like, the whole planet was sort of in contact with one another at the time of Rashek's ascension. But I could buy that they were very culturally still. I mean, they're on the other side of the planet, right? I mean, maybe Rashek moved everything around, but it seems reasonable that they were like relatively distant to where the Terras were.
It could totally be like a thing where, like in our world, where like Rome knew of China, but like it's so far that like, I mean, you could get there, but there wasn't a huge deal of intermingling and stuff, and maybe even further than that, right? I just don't think that they're actually a control group, because I do think he had to have made other modifications. Like maybe they're not genetic, maybe it's like a magical thing. I don't know. Like they adjusted spiritual DNA.
Or environmental.
No, I don't think.
But the environmental thing is the ash, right? And it's not the ash, right?
I could see some aspect of it being that he like moved them underground or something. Like that could feasibly be something he might have done. I don't know if that like would help a lot, but
there is reference. The Southerners do say that like they think hell is the sky because the earth is warm. So
yeah, but a lot of their culture ties
from the ice
to like fire and warmth, right?
Yeah.
I think so. I think realistically, what's happening here is that originally, when Brandon was writing these annotations, he thought that the Southerners would be pure, unmodified genetically. They just would have survived like a true control group. And then, as he was getting to the actual Era 2 and realized that, oh no, this is not going to work. I need to lower their body temperature for them to survive in the changes that I've said have been introduced to the world. Then he made that decision. And so the way I'm justifying all of this is, one, annotations are not canon, right? They're old. Brandon's thinking of how things are going to work out.
Yeah.
And two, maybe it is just that the modifications Rashek made to the Southerners are far smaller in scope than what he did to the North.
I would believe that, and I'm just rationalizing it by not taking the word control group too seriously, right? Like, it is another group of humans that if Final Empire totally crashes, there will still be humans. It's kind of like Kandra, really. That was another safety net as well.
So I think that's valid, but just to, I guess, to be clear, my opinion is that he didn't make any modifications to them, and that they just did naturally survive. I think that I do think they had adapted. Like, I think living for 1,000 years in that climate made them naturally adapt over time. Another point is they could live further towards the geographic South Pole than the Northerners do to the North Pole.
True.
I had a fun idea with that. Like, if assuming they actually lived at close to the southern geographical South Pole, they would have had summers with like constant day, and like the mask wearing has to come from somewhere. Like, stupid idea, but maybe it's because to prevent sunburn, they put on masks. And
to be honest, that's actually totally plausible. That's plausible there.
Sunglasses built in. Because it's daytime, 24 hours a day in the summer.
I'm just not sure how much like just regular old natural selection could like adjust their body temperature. Like I've been listening to a lot of YouTube videos about like mass extinctions, and like those would happen over thousands of years of just like a little bit colder and a lot of species can die. So I don't know about that. I do think they were modified. But I mean, like we don't know.
I feel like, and maybe there's evidence contrary to that, but I feel like humanity hasn't really evolved or changed that much genetically in the past, 7,000 years or whatever. Like, yeah, we've changed, but a lowering of the body temperature of however many degrees seems like a much bigger change than anything we have experienced.
I would agree. Yeah,
extreme conditions in the south, they would select for certain attributes faster, but like these are big, rapid mutations.
Yeah, but it's also the Cosmere, and they have a bit of investiture in them, and like I feel like there's room in the Cosmere for adaptations to happen faster.
You are unfortunately right.
I do think
the fact that
go ahead.
The fact that humans on Scadrial have a little bit of extra preservation in them too might plausibly account for like them surviving just generally in this really rough climate.
Oh, you know what I hate?
What's that?
I hate the fact that Brandon could easily spin this off as, well, not only are humans, more invested in the Cosmere than we are, obviously, but also Scadrians, they're a little extra invested by preservation, and so during the random mutations that happen during sexual reproduction, maybe the investiture plays a role and like forces the mutations to be not so random and forces them to go in like a more preserving route.
I don't know about that one, but I mean, yes, the spiritual mumbo jumbo can be used to rationalize whatever Brandon wants, which is exactly why Brandon's like, this is why I write fantasy. But he could... Maybe the modifications, there's like some spiritual modifications rather than like necessarily physical ones. And like, because in the law, Brandon's like, oh, they're not genetically changed. So like maybe that part's the same. And there's some weird, like he manipulated their spirit in some way, because like spiritual stuff does affect the physical, but maybe not genetically. He adapted the spiritual DNA and spirit web. Like there's a lot of ways you could do this, right?
Big technicality.
And I do think that Rashik did something to ensure that they would survive. Like I find it really hard to believe that they just survived on their own. Like maybe he got done with the northern people and thought, okay, now I can quickly fix the southerners and like do a bad job maybe, and it's like
considering he did all that stuff with the Kandra, right? Like the Kandra were, let's put them underground. If this crap goes terribly, well, at least we still got the Kandra, I guess. Like he did a lot of things. So yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to know how like Northerners interacting with Southerners, how like that will work genetically and with the modifications, like will they still be like how will that work? Would a Northerner and Southerner kid, Marasi Alik, be the first ones, obviously. Would they be different? Like, how would that work?
So Ayatil is an interesting case of that, right? So, so there's a Southerner, genetically Southern, but she grew up in Silverlight, and she seems to be adapted to more normal-ish temperatures.
Well, true. But also keep in mind, Roshar specifically is very warm.
Not like Southern Scadrial warm, though. Right?
They barely get like snow in there.
Yeah, but they're like cold under normal temperatures. Yeah.
But like the Reshi Isles are, that's warm, and like you can tear off your shirt and stuff. I don't think on the Shattered Plains that's a great idea. Like especially with like heavy winds.
We do have
stuff.
The Frostland, so
it's the Frostland.
If the global temperature would be,
but like she is fine over there.
Yeah,
but there's also totally room for the Ghostbloods and Kelsier stuff to like have access to whatever they need to magically get around.
I mean, she might have a medallion.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I would be surprised if she didn't, honestly. Right?
It sort of depends on when in the timeline her like ancestors got off schedule. It could technically be during the Final Empire times.
That's a good point.
If she was born and or grew up in Silverlight, the community there probably would have had access to like magical doodads from all around the Cosmere.
Yeah.
Just saying, it doesn't have to be medallions. Like she could have figured something out earlier because she got off planet earlier.
Totally.
Or her ancestors did.
When we get into, the big crossover stuff, I think it's interesting considering the differences that we have on these different planets, right? And what it means for sort of like life support, right? Because the Southern Scadrians, right? They're they're warmth medallions that they wear, right? And we'll get into that, I'm sure, are like a form of life support, right? Because they have to be wearing those if they're not, at even at the South Pole nowadays, they have to still be wearing them all the time because they're just maladapted for, what is a normal climate to other people. And like Rosharans are absurdly tall and are used to this high oxygen environment, and like, what are they going to do when they go to some other planet that they're like,
wheeze is what they're going to do.
Probably had something in mind when he planned Feruchime to include storing breath, like actual.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That is a ferrochemical.
Yeah.
Same with like the air pressure stuff, right? Or radiance. That is very interesting. Speaking of crossover, I did a lot of WoB research, and it was really funny. Even before Bands came out, Brandon, like, people kept asking about the Southerners because I was very interested as well. And Brandon said, well, the 1980s tech level, what we now call Era 3, the world will be pretty explored, right? And so he would, and he even said, the Southerners, they'll be known in the modern trilogy. So in retrospect, it makes a ton of sense with Brandon doing Era 2 that he actually did the discovery of the Southerners. It still shocked me. Like, granted, even if you knew Southerners would be in Era 2, airships and the other things, is like, wow, this is very interesting.
He did talk about like mechanical them using mechanical means or technological means, but like, what does that entail? And then
I thought they were misfabrials. Fabrials. Yep.
Yeah. The Southern Scadrians being involved in Era 2 is very, I think, thematically on point, right? Because we get this sort of pulpy Indiana Jones kind of vibe from it, like these mysterious people from another place who have this culture that is so different to ours, and that sort of thing.
It also, like, that Western 1800s era tech, like, it does kind of evoke that as well, like you're exploring new lands and stuff. So definitely. Well, not that the Northerners do that much exploring, but the Southerners, they crashed there, and then Northerners did a little bit of exploring. And Brandon's actually waffled back and forth whether he would write something in the South. He intimated he'd like to, but then later was like, I'm not going to. But then in 2018, Isaac wanted to write a Mistborn novel set on one of the southern continent places, and so that is a very cool idea.
It sounds like Isaac has a lot of ideas about things he wants to write about and places he wants to explore, right? He's talked about or has been mentioned in the context of like a Threnody story and a southern continent story, and maybe the Nikki Savage thing is that maybe she has her own thing going on in the north.
Sorry. The list of WoBs we have is really long because I grabbed all of them. So Brandon does say in 2015, Firefight San Francisco signing. And he's talking about the Southerners, and it's like, oh, I can tell you this because it's in the annotations. I mean, a little bit, Brandon. You're equating the Hero of Ages Q&A with the annotations, but that's fine. The people down there were placed as kind of a control group to the changes that were made of the people in the North, where changes were made to live with the ash and things like that. But other changes were still made to them, or changes happened to them, shall I say. So he's saying kind of a control group. Slightly different. So there are changes. There were modifications for sure.
Rashek wasn't exactly, like the preeminent scientist of his. Right?
Yeah,
he's like,
Ascension's a hell of a drug,
off the mist. Let's move the planet. That sounds good. Like, so I'm not surprised that he wasn't very scrupulous.
Yeah, cool. So we're not really going to talk about the Southerner magical technology. Definitely by the time this comes out, our medallions episode where we talk about a lot of things there. You want to know about excisers? Go to that episode.
Not that you're going to learn anything about excisers.
You'll hear a lot of speculation about them, though. I like how that's just referenced twice in the entire book, and we're just going about it.
It's once, actually.
Yeah. Well, he references the excisers and that they're gifts. I think it's twice. It's in the same chapter, though. Only one chapter. But what we wanted to do was do more of cultural stuff rather than the magitech side of the Southern Scadrians. So let's talk about the Southern peoples. And we already talked about their cold intolerance, right? But let's go through, the groups that we know. And I always find, even when you read Bands of Mourning, wow, there are so many details in these about, I forgot that the Malwish, who's, that's the nation Alik is from in Jordis, that group of Southerners that were crashed, they're very serious about dancing, and I totally forgot this.
I would like to register a complaint before we go into cultural stuff.
Okay.
I don't like that we don't have good names for the Southerners collectively and the Northerners collectively.
Yeah, but think about names of continents. It's really weird to name entire continents. If you look into
Europe?
Well, I mean, the origins of the word Europe is very weird and very hotly debated. And think about just how dumbly America was named, right? It's weird to naming those things. If the Northerners went to the South, they would probably name the Southern continent. But I don't think the people from there necessarily would have a word for the entire place. I was listening to a video about how Africa was a word that was just for a part of Africa, and then it got kind of expanded into the name for the whole continent. And so I think that's very believable that the Southerners wouldn't necessarily have a name for their entire world, because they would just say, that's the world, right?
I can concede that it's believable. It doesn't make it any less inconvenient.
It would be nice to have a name. I don't doubt. Yep. For sure.
Maybe in Era 3.
I'm sure.
We can have the Basonites and...
Yeah, I mean, we don't even have a name for the Northern continent. It's just Elendel Basin and other crap that we don't care about.
Yeah, it's just Southern Scadrians is such a clunky name.
Yeah. Hey, you don't remember the article that I originally made on it with the Southern peoples of Scadrial? And then someone's like, oh, you should probably, change it to Southern Scadrian. Okay.
I think the North is worse, though, because we don't even have nations there. It's just
that's true.
The one nation.
That is true. At least we have some nation names in the South.
Although with the other cities now being rambunctious, we'll see if it might dissolve into city-states or something.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of national identity at this stage. It's just well, Those jerks over in Elendel.
Well, and the contrast is interesting because the Southerners have like a lot of nations.
Yeah.
Right. Like specifically, like they're very stratified into these nations and also tribes. Right. Like so there's like the 5 tribes that it talks about, and additionally there are multiple nations in there.
So I was researching this because I thought there were 5 nations. And so the reference to nations was at the very end when they were doing the negotiation over the Hunter airship. And Jordis was like saying, oh, well, I mean, another nation might think you're weak and attack you anyway. So I'm not sure how different that is. That might mean just 5 nations, and they're just like using words a little interchangeably, which would make sense. Maybe there's 5 large group of people, and there are nations as subsets of those larger ethnic groups. Maybe. It's not really clear to me.
Yeah, it is interesting because the way they talk about it, it seems like it's more like a case system where like everybody's sort of mixed together, but yet like they do refer to like the nations as separate, or the tribes as separate, with their own languages and stuff, right? So the fallen nation, right? Like Alik talks about how they have a weird language that he hates to speak.
Well, so 2 things about that. One, I'm not sure the Fallens are a nation per se, but I find that very believable that they would have a lot of languages because they don't have 1,000 years of the Lord Ruler doing unification. And because the Lord Ruler is not there, they probably have stuff that's directly from classical Scadrial and a bunch of different groups from there and linguistic groups.
Yeah, and specifically the Fallen, because they were the former ruling class.
Class, yeah.
Yeah, and so it would like it's on Earth. We also have like that the higher class speaks a different language than the lower class. That is very believable. And so it could be that it's something like that going on there as well.
It's like they don't French in England kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
yeah.
Let's go through the ones that we know about, so we have a little bit of context for like the more encompassing meta discussion around them, right?
Malwish. Those are Alik and Jordis's people. They
red masks.
Yeah, they do have red masks. Yep, that's true.
They like to dance.
They do feel strongly about dancing, surprisingly so.
So is that a cultural thing, or is that like their ship's thing?
I read it as a larger culture, but
I also read it as a larger culture thing.
It could be.
I think because the larger cultural thing that I got was that Alik was saying, oh yeah, I got to do math class. And Marasi's like, I thought you'd be like swabbing decks. And Alik was super offended that to get on the Malwish, to be a skimmer pilot. I love that the names are skimmers lowercase because the fair chemists who store weight are skimmer capital S. Love that, by the way. That like, we're supposed to be gentlemen. So it's like, this is a very prestigious occupation. And I guess at least in, like upper class, I don't know, but like very important people who become skimmer pilots, they at least feel strong about dancing. So that might be not a thing that everyone in their culture feels about, but at least whatever the upper echelon of their society is, I would believe that they feel strongly about dancing.
Sure.
Well, yeah, he makes a reference to, he says like, you're not calling me a low ship man, right? Like, and so that, I'm assuming that means like ships on the ocean where things are a little less cultured than in the airships, where they dance and whatnot. And
even like the scene, like right before the end where Alik like goes to get Jordis, and then they're about to fight. Jordis just says, you did well. I forgive you for your terrible dancing. So like, if that wasn't important with their culture, like they would not say that like before they're potentially going to die, in my opinion.
So that I think hints at, or to me, it's always hinted at, like maybe not a flirtatious relationship between them, but kind of a friendly banter. Because I think when Lick talks earlier about the person who gets strung up because of the poor dancing, I firmly believe that's himself. Like he stepped on his captain's toes or whatever, and she strung him out, and that's what this is hearkening back to.
Maybe because I'm not sure, because he's, first of all, Alik seems pretty honest in general. Like I'm sure there is room for deception, but what the way the wording of that paragraph goes when he's talking about the person who was tossed out the airship, they tied a rope to him, but he was down there for like 5 minutes there. But he said like a person named Svet said to him, and then like upon thinking about Svet, because Svet's dead, he saw one of the masks of Svet dying. So I'm not sure if like in, you know, an impromptu, like I'm recounting a story, if he would really lie if Svet said to Alik himself. It seemed like Alik was referring to someone else, at least there, but I do accept the possibility that it was someone else. But no, Alik does say, oh, he never got that dance wrong again. So I do think that was referring to someone else and not Alik.
So the Malwish do consider themselves separate, right, from these other nations or these other tribes. Because like at the end when Steris is doing her negotiations, right, with the captain is like, I can't tell you what the other people are gonna do. Like you can only count on what we're gonna do.
Yeah. Agreed.
And like the whole crew, Alik's whole crew seems to be Malwish as well.
I definitely agree that it is a nation/tribe.
And it's also interesting to consider how much influence Jordis and her crew have over the rest of the Malwish people. Like, because Steris is negotiating with them as if they are ambassadors or whatever, which obviously, like they can't phone to call a higher up. Yeah. But I wonder, because they have to be higher placed because airship crew are considered, you know, much better than low ship crew. But like, how much influence do they have to begin with?
Yeah, it's really unclear, which is probably why Jordis was very uncomfortable with these demands, because she wasn't thrilled about it.
I feel like they must have some authority, though, to be able to feel comfortable enough to proceed with the deals that they did make.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Jordis, you know, had a thing that maybe a bit like Notum in Rhythm of War. I don't know. Where like, oh, you really screwed it up. Good. But maybe the Malwish, certainly the Ends of Bands kind of implies that like, it's probably going to be okay and not cause an immediate war with the Malwish.
Yeah. Not the Malwish, right? But other other nations, other tribes might feel differently. Mm-hmm. Airship captains might be like something akin to nobility in there.
It's hard to say. At least from my read, Jordis is a very firm person, let's say, whereas Alik's very friendly, right? Where Jordis is clearly in command. It is interesting to wonder, like, how much, like, are there military ranks in there? Like, there's Jordis, the captain, but Alik seems pretty casual, but also that could just be Alik being super casual. It's not like Jordis, like, refers to Alik's rank, though, as well.
He's also young. Alik, he is. Yeah, he's what, 22?
22. That is what Marisi.
That's what Alik said, but Marasi, when he lifted up his mask, is like, I don't know, with that mustache, I don't know about 22, but you know.
Like,
So.
some men can grow a decent mustache ever, so.
But
It's
yeah,
possible
he's
a bit
considered.
younger.
Yeah, and he is considered like pretty casual, you know, with the way that he like takes off his mask.
That's true,
a bunch
for sure.
and stuff, and the others kind of.
That's a good thing to talk about, right? The culture of mask wearing and the way. I don't know about all Southerners, but the Malwish at least seem to express and/or communicate emotion through hand gestures, because like they have masks over their faces, right? Yeah. And I don't remember the exact details, but I feel like the idea of someone lifting their mask and like exposing their emotions it's not a considered taboo, but it's a rare thing that like it requires an occasion for you to do that. You don't do that all the time, which is why Alec is a little bit weird because he does it.
It's sort of like the safe hand on Rosha, like it's sort of an intimate thing to show your face.
Sure,
vulnerable.
Yeah. And I do think all the main Southern nations do wear masks. And I say that because Alik refers to the Deniers of Masks. So I think even these whatever 5 peoples or nations that there is, they all wear masks. And the Deniers don't and are dangerous for some reason. That's all we know about them.
Well, all that we know about the other nations practically is what Alik tells Marasi.
Yep. Let's mention the Hunters. The Hunters are interesting because I guess in my mind that was a subgroup of something else, but upon rereading it does sound like they are a nation and they have their own specific culture. Eatil is apparently has Hunter ancestry, and they receive one mask at birth and then a second one by adulthood, and that mask actually grows into their skin, so you cannot take it off. Yikes. And the Hunters were warriors, but now they're like looking for the cataclysm that destroyed society, and they're the ones who did the initial expedition about 6 to 7 years prior to Bands to try and actually destroy the temple. And a few of them came back, I guess, and that's what the Malwish heard of them, and they went up north to do the same expedition to get the Bands, to fight the Deniers of Masks. Whoa.
I'm going to extrapolate on Paleo's idea about the masks being sun protection, skin protection. I wonder if the hunter, this is kind of crazy, I guess, but I'm imagining like if the Hunters were like, they were hunters, and so they had to go out, like if they were all living in caves and stuff, and the Hunters had to go out more, and so they wore their masks so much that it like became part of their identity more so than the others.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. I could buy that during you know, Final Empire era. Yeah.
It does say, like, Alik tells Marasi that the Hunters give a mask right to each child, and then they only ever change it when they reach adulthood and put it on, and then it grows into their face. And back to the Malwish, too, it does mention that they would change their masks frequently depending on like their profession, or even as often as a lady in Elendil would change their hairstyle. It's like a haircut, you know, change your mask. But that's the Hunters just have the one that they change when they're adults.
Yeah. I don't know how much more we can say about the Hunters because, I mean, Jorda says that their ship's older, but I mean, yeah, obviously, right?
One thing that is interesting to me about the Hunters is it's the interesting juxtaposition of them being, so first of all, we have this idea that the people of the South had more of a caste system before the Icy Death, before the Catacendra.
Yeah.
So we have the rulers who became the fallen, and we have the warriors who became the Hunters.
Yeah.
And so I think all of the others are going to are going to trace back to like maybe the Malwish were explorers and scouts and things like that. Or maybe they were nobility, and that's where the gentlemanship comes in. But I find it interesting that the hunters were the warriors, but they are also the ones who currently look into the mystery of the icy death and the almost arcane aspects of history. So there's this nice contrast between, like, they're not some, or at least not necessarily some barbaric people who live for the fight. They're not berserkers. They are maybe not scholars, but there's a certain measure of curiosity to them.
Yeah. I would imagine there are dedicated scholars among them, I imagine. Surely.
Would not be surprising, yeah.
That is interesting. The Fallen are really cool. I totally forgot about the Fallen. Yeah, the Fallen were kings, and then it said they offended the Jaggenmire. Whoa. And which is why they think everything went wrong. And the way their culture works, I'm not sure if like this is a separate nation. It seems like they would just be integrated in with a variety of societies.
Yeah, I actually think like Malwish might be or like the Malwish might come from a nation, and like they have hunters, they have fallen among them. Like I feel like it could be that sort of split. Like the Malwish are a nation, and the others might be like groups that exist across all their nations.
Yeah,
potentially.
And
correct me if I'm wrong, Paleo. Jagen is kind of a root. The root of that is hunters, right?
Yeah. So Jagen in German, or like also Jager, I think in like Norwegian, I think, or Swedish is to hunt. Yeah. So I trying to figure out, like, in general, we can say that the Southern Scadrians are very much influenced, or like the language is reminiscent of our own Germanic languages, or mostly the Scandinavian ones. Like it's not so much like I speak German, but I can't understand all they are saying here. But some Norwegian people actually figured out, like at some point, Elik says like Hana Konga before he puts on the connection medallion, and it literally is Norwegian for like, is he a king or whatever, in reference to Vex.
Wax, nice. So, wow, cool.
Yeah,
nice. Wow, we got Payden talking about geography. Wow, we have a solid cast for today. It's almost like it was kind of planned a little bit,
but it was not.
Not really as much as it's turning out to be.
We don't dabble in things such as plans.
Oh yeah, I made this whole outline last night. And with the Fallen, we'll talk about the Jaggenmire, because that is interesting. Yeah. There's an interesting religion and mythology there. But a compliment means a lot. They're trying to relieve the burden of their failure, and they get plain masks. And if you compliment them and they did a really good job, they could get a fancier mask. So that's an interesting cast.
They have to take you to testify that you liked their service. Like,
yeah, it does have some caste system vibes, though, right? Like that definitely has some vibes of like untouchables in a sense.
It makes me think that there are more, like the tribes are like different castes basically, and then like the nations are different lines between those, because like it feels like you can't, like their society can't function the way this is described.
Yeah,
if they're like, if those tribes are dependent upon one another,
you can't have a nation of former kings. That's just it's not enough, right?
It's just unclear to me. Yeah, like which of these groups are groups within the nation? Yeah, the politics. I never thought I'd be like, you know what, Brandon? I want even more politicking. I do want to know the Southern politics, though. Like, what are the political division? Can we have a map and maybe
give us a
geographic map and a political map, please? That'd be great. Thanks.
Also a magnetic one, if possible. I would love that as well.
Yeah. How did the ferromagnetic ash? How's that work?
If we can have one of those pictures of that is like the planet, but there's a slice that is missing. Yeah, we can have that.
Yep.
Yeah.
This being said, by the way, the one group that we haven't talked about and that I feel might be different from the others are the Deniers of Masks.
I think they are different. I do not think they are integrated with these southern nations.
Yeah. And so I think the way this is working out is the Malwish are a nation, and for the life of me, I can't figure out what the name of that nation might be.
There we go.
Malland.
Well, it could just be Malv, like because Alex says he's from a town called Wislo. Oh, I don't know how. Like if you pronounce the German way, it would be Wislo.
Just go with German. That's probably more correct than ours.
Yeah, it's true.
And so it could literally just be Malve, like something like that. Because there's actually a city in Germany that's called Calve, and it's the same thing, just with a C at the front rather than an M. So
and are
it
they
could
like
work that way?
Would you call them like Calvish instead?
Well,
they probably don't use that suffix in German.
Yeah, we do. So you could call them Calvish. You could say that. So yeah.
No, I was thinking like Denmark and Danish, but nah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think Malwish, the people of Malland, are.
Yep. That's the name. That's their name. That's what some stupid northerner would be like. Let's divide up the places like Malland. There we go. We did it. We did great work.
So I think they're a nation, and they have hunters, they have fallen, they have potentially other caste-like groups, right? And then we have either 3 or 4 other nations, and then we have the Deniers of Masks, who I think are either one of the nations that is just being weird towards all the others, or they're like a 6th quote-unquote nation, right? The enemy beyond the wall, essentially.
Sure.
The barbarians or whatever. Or they are a group of people that is like an amalgamation from all the other nations, like people who have forsaken their mask culture and they've now joined with these people.
Nudists.
The Reshi. Like, so the Reshi are a good example for both of these things. You have people from all around Roshar going there and living their life who are also nudists.
I definitely like the idea that maybe they've drawn from every southerner nation and like some... It's hard to say what they're exactly like, right? Like, all we know is Alik's like, wow, it would be nice to have the bands to fight the Deniers of Masks. And they asked, the Deniers of Masks like us? No, Alik said, laughing. You're just barbarians. The Deniers are really dangerous. So I wouldn't say they're barbarians, but I get what you were evoking. Like, they're not of the standard cultures. So, like, maybe they're... I don't think Brandon would do another Mongol-inspired thing with, like, Genghis Khan, because that's supposedly a Lethi. Kind of.
They could just be, heretics, right? Like, that's the term for... anybody who is heretical.
It just, them being said as really dangerous makes me think that they definitely have some sort of military presence, and they could totally destroy a town or something. Like they're very serious business.
They're sort of, maybe they're like dangerous to society as well. If they got some footing in the Southern Scadrians, things might turn for the worse or whatever. I don't know.
I disagree. I think because they are brought up in the context of, if we had the bands, we could fight them.
Oh yeah, true.
I think we are looking at not an ideological problem. We are looking at a power problem.
Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily think you're wrong, but I definitely think that they're like, if you think about like the Red Scare, right? Communism and the specter of communism or whatever, like I could see somebody having that same sort of rhetoric, right? Like, it'd be great if we had, if we had nukes so we could fight the commies or whatever,
sure.
kind of thing.
They're really dangerous. Yeah. I think there's probably some ideological thing, but and like that would be a danger to society. But also they clearly have a powerful military presence. So like there could be both of them. Like really dangerous can mean both. Like dangerous to the Southern cultural norms, as well as a very powerful military that could maybe make it happen. So we really need to fight them to prevent that from happening.
I was wondering if they might control like an important magical location. So maybe Harmony has a perpendicularity in the south, and the Deniers have like taken over the area, and so they have power in that regard. Or maybe there's like a big metal mine somewhere in the south.
Yeah.
And like they control that, and that gives them a lot of power. And like all the other nations need to either rely on smaller deposits or like sneak in and take the metal out. So
they literally have the closest sort of thing to nukes that the Scadrians currently have. So if they had access to an metal mine, so yeah.
I mean, there might be an metal mine near Harmony's shard pool.
Yep.
Sure.
Right.
Double up.
Yeah. Thinking about this, I don't want to get too into the Fire Mothers, Fire Fathers. The things that the Sovereign, who's Kelsier, because he can't leave well enough alone. But, I mean, he did save him, so that's nice. But I wonder if there are regional differences on how some of these things work, or if Kelsier like made Fire Mothers, Fire Fathers for like each of these groups, right? Like, would he give them to the Deniers of Masks? Are the Deniers of Masks like people who like break in and steal medallions and stuff? Like, I mean, maybe it's something like that, right? Where they don't have Fire Mothers, Fire Fathers themselves, but they need to be like these aggressive peoples to steal them from other places, maybe.
They talk about the Sovereign being the king of the Southern peoples, right? So like all of them, maybe like at that point in time, and then it fractured or what, and he just kind of like wandered away a little later, and so like we I
mean it's I mean Alik says is he was our king. I don't know if that means like the Malwish, but I would imagine all of these groups need the medallions of some kind, right?
Or something like we could have both. We could have a nation of people that live off of fire people and medallions, and we could have a people whose nation is like underground near thermal vents or whatever.
Oh yeah, sure, for sure. So it's just interesting to think about how the magic mythology intersects with these cultures, and if there will be differences and things. I really like this Denier of Mask idea, stealing medallions. So I kind of dig that, because that would be doubly dangerous, because it doesn't... Metalborn are rare, right? Like, clearly they have some Elementers, but it's a very reverential thing. If you steal medallions, though, like that's pretty bad for any group, right? Like that's very bad.
And it sort of plays back to like the idea of the pilots being upper class people, like because medallions are so rare in their society, and the pilots get entrusted to mount them because they do need them more, I guess, because they need not just the warmth but also the weight ones. So that could be an aspect of why they are higher class people, the pilots, or why they see themselves as of higher status, because they are entrusted with more medallions, and it's a rare commodity there.
Well, I don't know how rare they are.
Like I don't think it's not like super rare, but I'm trying to think of a good comparison to like what something that like I would imagine whatever money they have, they would probably cost a lot of money. Like they're so vital that, like, maybe it'd be like I just have a phone, right? Like, people can get them, but they're not like cheap as water, right? Like, they're definitely important.
Yes, I agree.
But I don't know if it's utility. Like,
it's the kind of thing that I feel like everyone has, like at least the warmth medallion. I feel like everyone has one.
Yeah.
And so in that regard, maybe a smartphone is an apt comparison. But
like, I think if a group like the Deniers came in to like go to a town, and if they steal a bunch of medallions, like they're not easy to make. And you know, what if they like kidnap fire mothers, fire fathers, or something? People who have that ferrochemical warmth ability, who can store that in and actually charge the metal mines. Like, you could really do a lot of damage that way to an entire people.
Yeah, possible.
I imagine, like, so they have the whole fire fathers and fire mothers set up to fill up the medallions for heat.
Yeah.
I imagine it's probably more difficult to make the other kinds of medallions. Like, it feels like that would be more expensive.
Yeah.
And also, like, the 2 power ones are also harder to make. So
yeah.
That's very interesting. I kind of want to talk about culture and religion a little more. Before we, just talk about Kelsier, right? There's a lot to talk about with Kelsier here, like a lot.
Like so many episodes these days.
Yeah,
we're just gonna go into Kelsier.
Yeah, a few facts that I kind of forgot, even until I did research. Southerners, 1, have knowledge of Kandra, so presumably, Harmony has sent some there, I guess. I don't think they would have had it before the ice death, though. That seems unlikely. Right?
Yeah, no.
Alik says they're supposed to use different titles each time for Allomancers.
That's Kelsier. That's gotta be
Kelsier. It's like, Allomancers are great. But I mean, at the same time, you do need Allomancy to, like, do the push for the airships. Like, Allomancers are very important. So, like, I would imagine in most of these places, like, they would be pretty revered even without Kelsiers.
Yep.
Maybe he's like, oh, yeah, it's very important. Yes.
So you know what I bet happened? So I think Kelsier was just like doing his own thing there, and they started revering him because he's saving their life and whatever. And one of them was like, oh, thank you for your service, oh, metallic one. And then sometime later, that same person used the same metallic one, and Kelsier made a joke of, oh, you already called me that. And then it just completely spun off.
That's plausible.
Oh, no, we're not supposed to do that.
That is really, really plausible, actually. Yep. He's just cracking a joke, and they take that very seriously.
Yeah.
That's my headcanon now. That's what happened. That's canon. We gotta talk about the Jaggenmire, though, because the Jaggenmire is very interesting, because they have legends of ruin and preservation, and it's interesting because, well, what does Alik say? He's like saying it's like a god, only not, and he's saying it's like a thing that runs the world, yeah? When something grows or dies, the Jaggenmire make that happen. That really reminds me of Galdon talking about the door in Elantris, right?
Really?
I think so, because he attributes the door to, like, lots of physical forces. That immediately reminded me of that. And he says there is Hare and his sister Fru, who is also his wife, and she makes things stop and he makes things go, but neither can make life on their own. And he's like, yeah.
And what does that sound like?
Yeah. And Merassi's like, oh, it's ruin and preservation. And Merasi says, oh, the old Terrace gods, they're one now, harmony. And Alik says, no, they were always one and always apart. Very odd, very complex. So that almost makes me feel like they're not talking about shards as separately as like most of us do, really. And they're more like saying, oh yeah, these powers, that's really all just one power in a sense. I don't know how much you can extend this to Adonalcium, but they're definitely thinking that, oh, the shards are part of a greater whole. And they were always one, really, in the spiritual realm. Hey, that part's a joke. But it does give me some Adonalcium vibes, and maybe like that Adonalcium's like the mover that makes everything happen. I don't know, that's interesting.
Whether they have knowledge of other shards seems a little suspect, right?
Agreed.
So in their mythology, it might be just ruin and preservation, and together they make up everything, which is the Jaggenmire.
Yeah.
How do you feel about these names, Paleo?
So, Herr and Frue are literally, or I think in Danish, it's literally Mr. and Mrs. more or less, or like man and woman.
Really? That's hilarious.
So, and it is in their law, like in the Southern Scadrian law, they are brother and sister sometimes, and wife and husband at the same time, sort of. So, in this case, ruin would be the man and preservation the woman.
Yeah.
And so that is some Germanic again, but Jaggenmire, or how it could be, because they refer to it like Alex says, the Jaggenmire make, as if the Jaggenmire was plural. So I sort of like, I try to deconstruct how, as I mentioned earlier, as jofwu brought up, Jagen is in there. That's the only thing I could find that fit. And it could be that the E at the end is for the plural. And so it would be more like Jaggenmire if you pronounce it the German way. And then I couldn't find anything for Mir.
So maybe I can come in and say, well, what if they have Russian influence as well?
That'd be cool.
Because Mir means world.
Oh, okay. Okay. I kind of like this. I recently.
It also means peace in Bulgarian, so I don't know about that.
I recently watched Shadow and Bone, and I really liked how Russian influence on culture. It's like, oh, that's nice to see in fantasy.
Yeah.
Oh no, Mir, never mind. What is world?
But Mir is peace, right? But Mir can also be peace, because I could also, when I looked it up on Wiktionary, I found some, like in Norwegian, they also have Russian influences, and they do have Mir as a word to also mean peace. Right. So I do kind of like peace there, because if you say sort of ruin and preservation hunt each other, sort of like they're in a battle all the time, but there's also sort of peace because they do live and they are on the same planet. So that is something I came up with. The
hunter, warrior, destructive side, and the stasis, calm, peaceful side.
That was like one way I tried to explain it to myself, but it isn't like the Mir part, at least, isn't obviously Germanic in any way.
It's not as clear as Herr and Frau or Frau.
Yeah.
I do like the concept in the Jaggenmire that like the Southern Scadrians have this mythology that doesn't track exactly one-to-one with what actually exists, right? You know, like you would have in a real, like so many religions, right? In the Cosmere, they're like, you know, we worship, you know, this thing, and it's clearly, you know, just a shard, and they have like all of the details, right? Even if they call it something else, right? But I kind of like this concept. It brings life to their thing, where Alik is like, oh no, they were always together. Like you don't know what you're talking about, like them being together now.
Also, him saying very odd, very complex. It's like, oh, that sounds like shards. Like you could think about it in a very specific way and be like, yeah.
That is an interesting part, like that the connection doesn't cause. They don't have a translation for
Jaggenmire.
So
yeah, sure.
It doesn't just translate.
It isn't harmony. Yeah, exactly.
It is not harmony, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a word that means harmony, right?
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
It depends on how connection translation works, I guess.
Sure. But there is all of this touches on a theory that I know some people have, which is essentially the ancient harmony theory.
What's that?
I don't know the details, but I believe the gist of it is that the reason, like, ruin and preservation were in some capacity one even before harmony. And maybe that was a brief moment. Maybe it was just like a spiritual oneness, right? But I think the root of the theory lies with the Terrace prophecies and how they seem to point towards this unification of the shards within the Hero of Ages. And like, if those prophecies are pointing to that, then they must be coming from somewhere, and that somewhere is this idea of oneness. I am bastardizing the theory, but it's a theory that exists and it touches on similar things.
I thought it was that preservation gave the prophecies. Like, it was preservation stuff.
Yeah, but that's a lot of future sight.
Well, yeah, it's always been a lot of future sight. Yeah, I know. Yes. Like yes, it is crazy how much preservation future sighted in Mistborn. It is insane. Because there were, especially after multiple cycles of the Ascension. But so I don't know about that, but it's interesting how the mythology goes. I mean, prior to whenever preservation, made the well, I mean, they could talk to Scadrians all the time, right? Like, they literally could do that all the time. I see no reason why they couldn't. Well, I guess preservation would hear, so it's interesting how preservation would give prophecies, but I don't mean to get on a massive side tangent on the Terrace prophecies, which are still very weird.
I'm sure there's a point in time in which we're going to do an episode that touches on these things.
Yeah, got to talk about Discord, right?
Yes.
Let's call them Discord.
The whole Discord thing, if that happens, it'll be interesting in the context of their religion and like this idea of the Jaggenmire, getting out of
this
harmony.
Could totally be a thing that happens to harmony.
It's going to become the Maya Jagen.
Yeah, I do get the impression that like Brandon views like classical Scadrial, right, like as very fully fleshed out, right? There's all these concepts that keep coming back, like with Trell and the ruin and preservation thing, and like they clearly there was a lot going on back then, right? There were all these countries and people and mythologies and religions and the whole thing, and so it's not unreasonable to think, that a lot of that has sort of, or at least some of it, has survived into the modern day Southern culture, and evolved in that way, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would really love to know more about their mythology to see what they felt of Rashek's ascension. Like what mythologically, like how culturally did they change? Because like I imagine languages can be derived from classical Scadrial stuff.
I expect they are,
but how much of their nations do? Because that was another time of upheaval.
Yeah, the Jaggenmire thing probably is also a remnant of that, like, because why would they develop that newly when after Rashek's ascension? That wouldn't quite make sense.
Yeah, I definitely think this is very old lore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that they are... Yeah.
I did find the epigraph in question, and so listeners and viewers, if you this is not like super arcane, but it's a little out there. There's an epigraph in the first Mistborn book, in the Final Empire, where Alendi, among all his musings about being the hero of ages and the Well of Ascension and things like that, quotes a line from the Terrace Prophecies, which reads, "He shall defend your ways, yet shall violate them. He will be their savior, and yet they shall call him heretic. His name shall be Discord, and
Capital
they shall
D.
love him for it." Capital D.
Yeah.
Love him for it is very interesting.
And so obviously at this point we know that the Hero of Ages was never meant to be Alendi or Rashek. It was always meant to be Sazed.
Yeah.
And he did not ascend to Discord. He ascended to Harmony. But I believe we have a word of Brandon that either confirms or at least suggests that if the shards that he wields are not balanced, he may have shifted from Harmony to Discord.
Ah,
I sense a research break.
I do recall something like along those lines.
Unfortunately, there's only 10 Discord references, which is really great.
That's interesting, the shards being imbalanced. Does that have something to do with like the big sack of adium that
Possibly
didn't get put back into the power kind of thing? Because like we know that they were unbalanced, right? Like with Preservation having put a little bit more of himself into the creation.
Oh yeah, okay. Wow, yeah. This is. All right, so there's a 2015 one. And Brandon does say there's another name Harmony could go by if he weren't able to control the conflict between his halves. Yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, have you figured that one out yet?" "Oh, I'm not going to say anything. You have it on recording." I was pretty seeky with that one, so I don't know if you have it or not. And later someone asks, if you said his name wasn't Harmony, would it be something else? Would it be Discord? And Brandon says, "This is relevant." It is relevant? Yes. And another one from 2018, while Sazed holds rune preservation, could his intent change from Harmony to Discord? And Brandon says it's possible. So that's what we know.
This is relevant.
This is relevant, yeah. I mean, I would not be surprised if some Terrace Prophecy stuff is foreshadowing, Era 3 and Era 4, because he envisioned it as Trilogy of Trilogies, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for Era 3. I'm really excited for Lost Metal, but like if Era 3 was like, oh yeah, no, big things are going to happen here. I mean, big things happen in Era 1. Not that exploring the Southerners is not big, but...
Between Stormlight and finally movement along the Mistborn axes, it's always been exciting to be a Cosmere fan, but it's ramping up a little bit again.
We're coming into an exciting time with Stormlight 5 is apparently going to be a big deal, which of course it is. It's the last part of the first section, but
and as we have mentioned in the past several episodes, dear listeners and viewers, multiple members of Dragonsteel were very excited to approach us at Jordan Con and be like, you guys should be excited about the Lost Metal.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
There's some apparently there's some Cosmere stuff in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what the Fallen did to offend the Jaggenmire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
There's not really anything solid to speculate with, I guess. But.
No.
It's like, why did the Deniers of Masks deny them?
I guess the Jaeger, it's interesting to me that something was happening apparently at the time that Sazed happened to ascend, which made them think like, oh, it was their fault.
I think that could more just be a story they tell themselves rather than an actual thing that actually occurred. It's like, oh, well, they did something, but we don't really know the specifics and it's vague. I think that's what it is. I don't think they actually.
Yeah, I don't not say that they actually caused something, but it's just interesting, I guess, that it happened to happen at the same time.
Yeah.
What their law sort of is like how.
Yeah.
It is interesting that they don't know the cause of the ice death. You know, that that they don't know the actual cause of it. That
is true.
Kelsier sort of.
That is true.
Kelsier surely didn't tell them.
Yeah.
But it says there. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're looking for the true cause, which is interesting. So, on that note, though, we gotta. There's a kind of a big question about Harmony. Really, why didn't Harmony help these people? Like, it's interesting how he made the North super great, maybe too great, ultimately. Maybe too great. But during the Cassandra, he's like, nah, these modifications in the South, they stay. Like, huh.
Didn't he even reverse the genetic manipulation on the Ska?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He reverted all of Rashek's changes in the North.
Yeah, so this is kind of, I guess, a thought I had is I'm wondering how much he knew about them, because if most of what Sazed knows is from his religions, which predate Rashek's ascension. So if whatever things that Rashek did, he doesn't necessarily.
He doesn't have like the original. He doesn't have like the original thing. Okay, that's true.
And so, like, he's Harmony. He's preservation and ruin. He's especially connected to them because they have some of him in them. So, like, he's going to become aware of them pretty fast. But he might not have become aware of them and all the details around them in the few moments that he was sort of reworking the world really fast. So, you know what I'm trying to say?
This is the question that I have, right? So Rashek only had, a minute or however long with the power. And so he had to kind of just like pew, 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 and do stuff really quick, with his limited knowledge, right? And like Sazed, right, had more knowledge, and so he was able to do stuff more. But he was actually like taking the shards, not just taking the power at the well.
Yeah, sure.
So he doesn't have a time limit, really, except for, his thing where he can no longer move because, of the two shards. But I feel like he would have had enough time to kind of learn about them and stuff before that gridlock happened.
Like in the first year.
And do more stuff, make more changes.
I like the idea that, he didn't have the original template, but at the same time, his religions gave him the template of what humans were like originally, and the power remembers how it was used. So I think he could, know exactly what Rashek did to the Southerners. Surely he would have to know that. Just by, like, that is, the power remembers what it's used for. We know that that's a very regular thing. And two, he does have the original template of humans. So, like, I liked the idea that, he doesn't maybe have the knowledge in his metal minds to do a thing, but surely in the first year he could figure it out.
Yeah.
He could be like, there are people down there and they're dying. Let's just nudge the continent up a little bit, latitude-wise.
Because Kelsier doesn't show up to them until like a decade
later. It's a decade later.
Yeah.
And so that's a decade that seemingly Harmony did nothing. Now, you could argue that the intent of his new shard settled in pretty quickly. Like, I've always assumed that shards have the most freedom, like literally at the moment of their ascension, and then it just immediately drops off, right? And if Sazed had wielded a different shard, maybe that would not have been a problem. But because he's got these two opposing ones, then the drop off is, well, now you can't do anything.
I wonder if there are things Harmony did to help them that was not just revert all. Like, it wasn't just like all undo, but maybe there were things that he did that the Southerners don't recognize because it wasn't enough. It's like we're getting a really biased story from the Southerners, obviously.
I mean, but they were freezing to death.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, if you're gonna help them literally survive.
Yeah.
It's possible though that that it wasn't just the intents of the shards making it impossible for him to make those changes then, but maybe making him disinclined to interfere in such a like his actual desires, changed to be like, I'm not going to interfere in such a drastic way because that's just not how I work or something.
Surely when you're remaking all the continents and literally doing exactly that, then you could. But it's interesting that maybe the Catacendra was a pretty one-time event, because reading the very end of Secret History, like, Kelsier can, like, see all the realms coming together and stuff, and then it kind of reverts back. Like, maybe Harmony could do it again, but maybe that is not ideal to use so much power like that. Like, it's clearly doing something on all three realms, but I still just don't know why he wouldn't revert the changes that Rashek made, because that's what he was doing everywhere else.
My thinking is very much rooted in this idea that, like, he made these decisions very fast. That, like, in the seconds, moments, he picked up these two shards and is like, oh, I gotta, like, fix all this messed up world. I'm gonna remake it how it was. And in the process of doing that, he's like, oh, there's some people, like, on the South Pole. What's the deal with them? And he's kind of reading all this information that he's getting. But by the time he, like, understands who they are and how they got there and what their biology is and all this stuff, he's, like, already winding down. And now the intents are locking in, and he's starting to think, maybe I shouldn't touch them. There's also, here's another argument, is that he could have some future sight that warned him against making. Maybe if he did make some kind of change, it would be worse.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
I want to bring that up as well. Like, as he he first focused on, okay, I have to fix the north and get everything in order there, and then he became afraid of the southerners, maybe. But he also was at a point where he was also starting to be able to, like, read connections more and, like, look in read fortune stuff and whatever, and saw that, as Joe said, that whatever he might do might actually make it for the worse, or turn it to for the worse. And so he decided to not interfere.
Well, and that could tie into, actually, like, some Rhythm of War stuff, right? With this, like, maybe he saw that they would need this sort of more advanced technology and stuff, right? And we know that he laments that the Elendel Basin, right, is so sort of behind in technological advancement. Like, it's a big deal to him that they are. And so maybe it was some sort of attempt to not coddle them in some way so that they would progress faster, because he's seeing these upcoming strains of, like, conflict between worlds and stuff.
Or well, no, he wouldn't really see Trell's influence. I was like, what if he, like if I help them, then that would lead to lots more mixing between these two cultures, which could have some bad ramifications in the immediate future. Or it could just be as simple as there's a lot more people there, and the North is so screwed and small that, like, if he helped them, then maybe that would literally be destroying the North. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, considering that they could probably sweep in and do that now, almost.
I mean, yeah,
you have to wonder if they couldn't, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if they didn't have that setback, then they might have done that.
They might have.
Maybe he saw that Kelsier would, like, he already foresaw that Kelsier would go there, and he thought of, okay, I want to get rid of Kelsier. I don't want to deal with him right now. Let's not take care of this. I
mean, it's true, though.
I was going to say...
Yeah,
I was going to say that this is similar to what I was thinking, but then you went off and made it not.
Oh, yeah.
The two theories that I am so I've never been okay with any explanation of why Harmony didn't do anything. Like, that's always seemed to me like a dick move.
Yeah, a bit.
It is.
It's not great.
And so the two explanations so far that I can kind of get behind are either A, in the moment of his ascension, he was, by virtue of being a northerner, he was focused on the north. And so if his kind of initial outburst of power and attention was focused there, then maybe by the time he became aware and realized what was happening with the South, he either didn't have the power anymore or didn't have the inclination to make changes there. So that's A, I can kind of support. And B is some future sight shenanigans. So in the moment of his ascension, maybe he goes, oh, if I don't do anything there, a number of them will die, and that's tragic, but also Kelsier will go there, and he will help them, and he will save them, and that will advance the overall technological level of the South to a point where the North might not get to, or might not get to anytime soon, or they might get there fast enough to become relevant in the upcoming cosmic war.
The issue with that is, then why would Harmony just lie to Kelsier at the end of Secret History? Like, I don't think you can get back your body. You know, like, right? It doesn't quite fit with that.
It's possible that, I mean, at this point, it's like quadruple agent, right? He's doing a thing where he lies to Kelsier because he knows he's a good liar, and he knows that Kelsier is going to pick up on the lie, and he knows that he will become extra motivated to find a body, right?
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't know about the why of it, right? Like we've bandied about a lot of ideas about why he might not have intervened more directly, but I actually kind of take it a step further with this idea that he knew that Kelsier would go down there, and I kind of think that he might have sent him because this Harmony has this thing about, right, like, I can't intervene so directly. I need to send Wax as my representative, right, sure, who embodies ruin and preservation, and so like this idea of changing things in a more subtle way by through agents, I think could tie in well with him. Once Kelsier is back in the flesh,
might as well use him.
Him being like, yeah, okay, go do a job for me, and
here's metal to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe. The problem with that to me is that Harmony seems to really dislike what Kelsier is doing with hemalurgy.
Yeah. And that is all of what happened in the South too, is all hemalurgic.
Well, not necessarily
involved.
Not
at the
necessarily.
very least, it's Kelsier getting his body back and like using hemalurgy to presumably to get a body. And
question about Exciser is if he could go to the medallion episode. We talked about the hemalurgy there.
Assuming that the medallions use hemalurgy in some way, along the line.
I am not gonna say that I will eat Ben's shoes if that is not the case, but a less cautious man than me might say that.
I could see Harmony or Sazed giving some hints to Kelsier, at least for like the Farukami part of it all, because Kelsier, like, he knew a Farukamist, but he didn't really know Farukami, or he wasn't a Farukamist himself, so he would need some hints to get started there. So that is something I could see Harmony providing.
Well, maybe let's talk about Kelsier. What did he do? Because there's
actually before we go into Kelsier, one last loose strand. Marsh.
Yeah.
We don't know much about what Marsh is doing in Era 2 or what he has been doing between Era 1 and Era 2, but the only thing that we do know, other than the book that he gives to Marity, is that he either is or was in the South investigating on behalf of Harmony.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Maybe with Kelsier, maybe not. We don't know. They don't always see eye to eye.
Well,
can we get a reference?
Actually, so here's the thing, right? So they can never see eye to eye because their spikes are in different eyes.
Jeez. Yeah, that's the fun I was going for. Thanks.
My God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is an eye joke.
I did, well, yes, but I was going for the fact that because they're opposite eyes, like the spike of one is always into the eye of the other, like, and so.
No, but Marsh still has the two spikes in his eyes. It's just one's battered in.
Okay,
it doesn't work.
I got the impression that he is supportive of what Kelsier is doing just because of the way he talks to Marcy. I think at the end of Alloy of Law, he comes across as like very positive of his brother. Wax is doing his brother's work, I think is how he phrases it.
Yeah.
That's true. That so much.
He's not wrong.
I've always read that as him like referring to Kelsier's work while he was alive. Not necessarily his work now.
Could be.
I mean,
yeah.
But he's giving him the hemalurgy like book to like help them out with what they're doing presently. Like that's the context that he says it in.
Yeah.
When was the warp actually? Like maybe
the
Marsh. Yeah.
Yeah, for the viewers' sake.
The Marsh one was November 2014. Wow.
So that makes me wonder, like, when in relation to the actual books, Era 2 books, is Marsh in the South? Is it like
before Shadows?
The quote he says is, where is Marsh?
He
is currently there.
Well, it would have to be before Shadows, yeah.
I mean, it's been 300 years. Plenty of time to go back and forth, as much as
yeah, sure, but I mean, that could, to me, would imply that maybe he even thinks of Kelsier's other work there. Like, not sure, but I don't know.
The wob about Marsh investigating the southern continent is paraphrased, so like there's kind of the risk of like.
I don't think we should take too much on the tense. But Marsh has definitely done stuff down there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Kelsier has done a lot of stuff in the South, so let's go through the details we know. 1, he went to the South, a decade after the Cassandra. He gave them excisors, started the Fire Mothers of Fire Fathers, became their king. Don't know what the political situation of that looks like, of which nations and stuff, but of course he became a king. He, everyone seems to know it's like, oh, he's from the North, and he was the North god, and it's like, well, I mean, technically that's true. I just love how everyone thinks it's the Lord Ruler the entire time. It's like, Kelsier is a god to the Northerners. Like, it's true.
Well, especially with the bit where they're like, but he died. And I'm like, yeah, he told us that too.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. And then, so he was their king for a time, but left. And he left with his priests. His priests were not Southerners. They were absolutely not Southerners. They did not know who they were. They left. He took the bands, which he made, I guess, around this time. And the priests built the extremely impractical temple, the Sovereign's Temple. In
the northern continent.
Nearer to the northern continent, yeah. And he told his priests to protect the bands until he returns. And the Southerners are all like, well, I mean, he always likes challenges. We gotta go up there, which totally believable, by the way. But some of the priests left clearly they left the temple and some of them went back south and, told them about the temple. Because Alik says that some of the priests went back.
Some did.
So,
with the priests coming back, one of the things, so they've entered the temple, there's a mysterious door in front of them, and Suit says, I can get you through the door. I have the key, passed from the lips of a dying priest to a doomed hunter to an airship captain and now at last to me. Now, the airship captain is Jordis.
Yeah. Yes.
The doomed hunter was probably one of the hunters who went to bomb the temple, and so one of the survivors that came back. And so one of the dying priest who told the hunter must have been like a descendant of one of the original priests that
I guess. Jeez.
that came back, or
was still there.
Yeah, like when did Kelsier do this is my next question, right? So obviously we're not going to have a priest who lived like 200 years and then died
100 years.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean,
depends on where the priests come from.
ATM.
Yeah. I mean, but let's assume the priest is not functionally immortal. The priest.
Yeah. Let's assume that this dying priest that Sud is talking about is not one of the original priests that came back from the temple. But maybe like some disciple or descendant or like a secret that got passed from a priest to a priest, right?
Yeah.
So this is the interesting thing, I think, about the temple too, is that the Northerners didn't know about it. Like nobody knew, like, or even thought about it until Suit and his like people found the downed hunter ship, or whatever, and like the Southerners all knew about it, but like it's sitting there in the New Saran range. And nobody in the North knew about it except for Reeler, the Kandra,
because he found it.
Who was looking for it. But that's very interesting to me.
They had legends of the bands, though, and I want to get on this again because the legends of the bands. It's like, oh yeah, you pick up the Lord Ruler's braces and get all of his powers. What? How did that legend start? How did they know that pre-Catacendra, which apparently are well documented? Bah. It irritates me. I don't know what's going on there, but okay.
I mean, that seems like a believable myth to build around the Lord Ruler, right?
Yeah, but like it's just outside in Credit Shaw, man. Like they put that. There's just issues. I'm just a little confused about how it's named that. Why are they called the Bands of Mourning? There's lots of questions about that.
I don't question that there are issues. I'm just saying this is a believable myth to build around.
It's a believable myth. Yes.
Team mourning for Luther, of course.
You joke, but
I mean, it's actually true. So in the temple, after all the Indiana Jones traps, with that door, the dying priest gave that password. We'll talk about the symbols on the door, but inside the door, there was wax remarks that it's basically a throne room that has a pedestal that used to have a glass box, but that was, we can make some art. It's great.
That's the pedestal.
Yeah. That the glass was broken. And then down in the pit below it, through a trap, there was a second pedestal that had fake bands that don't do anything.
And
yes,
on top of all of this, there was a mural of the first decoy room out in the entrance. Right, so they're walking in. There's a statue of Kelsier with the spear and the real bands. There's a mural there that shows the empty room with the pedestal, and then they go through the traps. They go through the door. Here's the real room, the real first decoy. Then they go down through the caverns. The second decoy with bodies of frozen priests just kneeling in supplication around a fake bands.
So
that is weird for the second fake out, for sure.
So a thought. Maybe. So I don't think the glass box that was in the main throne room area, I don't think that was broken when they built the temple 3 centuries ago. Like really? Sovereign left and broke that. No, because I think, your comment about the dying priest means there were priests who were around, and maybe it was like a few decades ago, but there were priests that were there, right? And maybe it was a priest broke it.
They built the second decoy.
Yeah, maybe. Clearly the dying priest knew how to get into the room, right? And so I don't know if it was 3 centuries of dust that Wax remarks on about the throne room. Like, I think it's a little more plausible that it's, a few decades, right?
Yeah. I can actually buy that, right? So Kelsier builds the temple, puts all the traps, puts the special door, and then a room with a glass display and puts big bands in there. Yeah. And there's a mural outside that shows just that, and this seems consistent. And then he leaves, and then sometime later, the priests go, oh no, this is not secure enough, and maybe there was an incident that made them think that. Maybe somebody showed up and almost got through the traps or whatever, and they're like, okay, we're gonna break the glass, build another hidden chamber, and put the bands there.
So so there were priests there, because apparently the Southern story is he left the priests at the temple. What? That does not seem like a place you could survive in very long, I guess. Much less camp out there for a while. And so what are they doing there? And 2, why did Kelsier leave the bands here anyway? Just straight up. Why did he leave them there and be like, I'll be back. I'll be back for the bands. I need them eventually, but protect them. But I'll need them. There's so many questions.
Strange. So he obviously did not tell his followers, his priests, about the real bands. He was deceiving them as well.
Yes, I would say so, yes.
Yep.
And so I don't know if this is just Kelsier being paranoid and not wanting to reveal the fact that, I'm gonna... maybe for whatever reason, he needed to leave the bands somewhere safe. And so he's like, okay, we're gonna do this thing where I will tell my priests that I am leaving these bands here. I am showing you the bands. We're gonna leave them in the temple. I'm gonna tell them to protect them, but I will also sneakily actually leave the actual bands on the statue because I'm gonna need them later.
Well, Alik's people would tell you that he didn't actually intend to come back for them at all and just wanted to give them a challenge of something to come and find.
See, I'm inclined to believe the Southerners in that, because it's why go to all this trouble for this elaborate temple? If you want to hide something, there are easier ways to hide it.
Yes.
And Kelsier is I don't think he would go to all that trouble if there wasn't a purpose. And all the drama and the flair of this temple with all these fake outs, it feels like Kelsier doing the whole religion thing. He thinks that there's a story that he's trying to tell here for a reason. I don't know what that reason is.
Which is interesting, because why would he want people to... Because I think he didn't want them to find the real bands. I think he genuinely was storing them there, where he could just kind of stroll by and just
you could just leave it in the cave like Wax thinks. You could just leave it in a random cave.
That's what I'm saying. It feels like he wanted them to find the real ones, and he wanted there to be this whole thing around them for reasons of...
Yeah, go ahead.
It might be more about the story.
For a reason why he might have to leave them behind at all. It's maybe he needed to go back to the cognitive realm for something, and whatever they do, they didn't have a way of transitioning, or he couldn't take the bands with him for whatever reason, and but that is a reason I could see. Yeah, that would be a reason I could see for leaving them behind at all.
It's not a Shardblade, though.
Not a reason. Yeah.
It's not
let me throw this idea. So Rhythm of War spoilers.
Yeah.
What are the chances that the priests are ghost blood?
Surprisingly high, I'd say. honestly, but in that case, right? Is Kelsier bluffing his own Ghost Bloods, because it's like, if they're dying priests, like if he's lying to the priests to protect the bands that aren't even the real bands, that maybe in that pit down below, they are too reverential to even touch them, to know if they're real. But I mean, I guess they moved them. Someone broke the glass, right?
Yeah.
It's unclear. But like, regardless, Kelsier just straight up lied to them. And so I'm like, is he, if they are Ghost Bloods, like, that doesn't seem like a great working relationship there, but
wouldn't be the first time he has lied to his crew.
I mean, you're not wrong.
And
not wrong.
We are only familiar with the Roshaden branch of the Ghost Blood, so maybe on Scadrial it started out different, or it started out more as a cult and it became an organization later. I don't know, but I could see them being Ghost Bloods and him still lying to them, and because they are priests. They are not like they're not like just members of an organization. They are priests for him. So,
I'm like, where'd he get all these priests a decade after the Catasandra? What?
And non-Southerners.
Yeah. Like, maybe they were just a bunch of Northerner dudes that were part of Spook's crew, but like, how many people did they have out of the storage caverns to just like go on crazy expeditions with Kelsier? What?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need that many. Like, he needs like a couple of dozen people. It's fine.
Yeah, but no, look, that temple is a big construction project there. I mean, I get that they have allomancers and stuff, and they have magical abilities, but it still looked like a big construction effort in the middle of nowhere.
That is fair.
I don't know how much we need to, like, how plausible is it that the Sovereign and his priests built the temple in the middle of nowhere? What's the infrastructure like to get to the temple? It's like, I don't know how much Brandon's thinking about this. Like, don't think about that too much. But.
So this actually segues really cleanly into a pet theory, a crack theory of mine. And that is that the priests that he brings with him are not Northerners either. I don't know if I think that, but I think it would be interesting if they were actually not only Elantrians, but members of the Eyrie.
Oh, jeez.
I think off-worlders at any rate. Like,
so let me lay some flimsy, very circumstantial evidence for you.
I mean, we don't have much evidence to go on anyway, so.
So there's a door in the temple after all the acid and traps and stuff like that, and around the door there are.
But not the capital D door.
No. Lowercase d double O.
And not the door the singer in Rhythm of War either.
Different. Oh my god, I hate door.
just wanted to be clear here. Sorry.
Door the singer was one of the priests.
Yeah. Sure. Maybe. So that's a question for Brandon right there.
There were some markings carved into the door, if indeed that's what it was, thanks Wax. Circles with symbols in them inlaid in silver. And Alik doesn't recognize them, which means they're not Southern in nature.
Yeah.
And obviously Wax and Co. also don't recognize them, so they're not Northern in nature either. And then
there's
later
like a
on,
clockwork mechanism that you have to push allomantically on the metal symbols, and if you don't get it right, it will lock for a decade.
Yep. And later on, when Suit is telling Wax the correct combination, which remember he got from Jordis, which she got from a hunter, which then in turn got from a dying priest. The correct combination includes a symbol that has a triangular shape. So like a circle and then a triangular shape inside.
The Deathly Hallows?
Yes, it's the three symbols of the...
Sorry. That's what came to mind.
And so that is pretty much all we know about the door. And then at this point, it just like unlocks, it like rolls away or slides away or whatever.
God, it's so dramatic.
It scares you.
It's so dramatic.
But on top of this door, there are blue lights that illuminate them. So like when they walk in, I think Alik puts a primer cube in a place on a wall. Was it not a primer cube?
I literally don't remember this.
So they leave the entryway. This is chapter 23. They're walking into the temple.
Yeah.
They leave the entryway, stepping through a door, which is a different door than the special door that we talked about earlier.
Yep. Also not the singer.
Also not the singer. Also not the corpses of devotion and dominion shoved into the
Yeah. None of those.
We're having far too much fun with this. Anyway, so the leak, who at this point is wearing a warmth medallion,
yes,
is muttering something. He follows something with his eyes, a metal pattern on the wall. So, like, I imagine not a wire, but like maybe a thing. And he pulls up a primer cube that he got from the skimmer. He opens its side, uses tweezers to extract a small nugget of metal, which obviously is metal.
Yep.
And then he shoves that into a cavity in the wall and then pulls a lever. And what happens is everything lights up. So there's like a low hum and everything lights up in blue lights.
See, I thought you were going to go with like, oh, there's aeons lighting it up, but I didn't remember that you had to put that metal in to get the lights to turn on. Like, yeah, I'm just imagining. Imagine if it was Final Empire era and they're like, oh, to turn on the lights, you got to put the atium in it. It's like, there you go. Like, okay, sure. Super rare metal, using it for lights.
Yeah. So I was going to use this blue light thing. By the way, the illumination inside the quote-unquote throne room where the glass box is, like the first decoy, that is not the same. That is some kind of natural-looking light from somewhere.
Yeah, but
we don't know about.
In the second fake pedestal, that one has the blue light.
Yeah. But I was going to use that to say, oh, this is like magical technology. Maybe the Irie are involved. No, because a leak knows about like how to turn on the lights, essentially. I don't think the illumination is Irie in nature, unless like all of the South has the same technology, and I don't think that is realistic.
I
don't know how they work, but I don't think they're Irie in nature. Anyway, so back to the symbols on the door.
Yes.
When I didn't think much of them when I first read the thing. Like, okay, that's weird. It's a 3-symbol combination that apparently spells out something that only Kelsier would understand.
Supposedly, the Lord Ruler would understand.
Yeah.
I think David had a theory that it'd spell Vin, I think.
Yeah. I thought it was Vin as well. It could also, however, spell out Irie.
It's true.
And all of this comes from...
Irie don't begins with a J.
Irie is a single aeon.
Well, yeah, but in other languages.
Yeah, but like, if the symbols were aeons, like you wouldn't usually put a circle around them, but I mean, you could, I guess.
Right, so the way they're described, so if we are literally looking at circles with like symbols inside, then we are probably not looking at aeons. But when I was rereading Era 2 recently in preparation for our episodes and in preparation for The Lost Metal, I thought that a lot of the aeons that we have seen, they don't look circular, but like a lot of them include arcs.
Yes.
And so they're vaguely circular in shape.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but a lot of them are.
They have circles incorporated in them.
Yeah.
Things.
And I thought this might be like somebody who is not familiar with aeons might describe aeons in this way.
Yeah, I do think that's plausible. Honestly, like they wouldn't know what they are. It's like, oh, there's some weird symbols. It kind of looks like a circle, I guess.
Plus the weird mechanical / magical nature of the door. Plus Kelsier's interaction with the Irie. Like, obviously, he's not a fan of them, and they're not a fan of him after the little thing where he played pretend, like ruin. But like, he would know of them, and like, if he's looking for a construction project that incorporates magical doodads, he might consider them a possible contractor.
Yeah. I guess, sure.
One thing regarding the blue lights, I do think they could still be like non-Scadrian tech, because it could just be that like Ellie saw the metal line, and because he knows it from their technology, he traced it back and thought, okay, he can fit one in there. But he didn't know what to expect from it. I could see that being the case. So, because otherwise, like,
would you say that like you could just charge it in any way, and Alik's just using the et metal to turn it on?
Yeah, no, I think they would use et metal for it. Just like, it is designed for et metal. It's just that it was designed with et metal in mind. So because they don't have the door there, they need another source of investiture.
That's the thing, though. Like, Alik doesn't like. Alik is following a line, and then there's a hole in the wall, and he's like, "Oh, obviously, I must open my primer cube that I have in my pocket and pull out the piece of metal."
But yeah, because the mechanism looks familiar to him. He doesn't know what to expect, but he still knows it from their technology. Is what I'm thinking. As a feasible explanation for why it could still be Irie tech. Or like, so the lights don't necessarily have to be Scadrian.
It's feasible, but it feels to me like it's just Southern Scadrian tech that they came and they built it with, and he recognizes.
Yeah, by a tech that is 300 years old, by the way.
Well,
ish.
Yeah, they probably didn't give them all this technology like day one. Like, it might have taken some time to like get there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how long it took for them to build the temple.
I mean, I don't think they've had airships for the last 300 years.
Yeah,
like,
agreed.
Well, it talks about how, like, Kelsier shows them how to make the heat medallions, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't give them the weight medallions or whatever. Yeah. They reverse engineered it themselves to make them much later.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And et metal sort of is also completely perpendicular to that, like orthogonal to that, because it doesn't play into it at all.
Well,
into medallions.
So far as we know.
Sure. Yeah.
It is notable that Alik doesn't really react to the illumination. So that's one of the reasons I think he kind of expected this to happen.
Okay.
It is perhaps mentioning, and I stopped reading just before that point, that there are no bulbs or anything rational like that. And this is from one of our protagonists' POV. Just sections of the walls that seemed to be made of translucent glass that glowed in a downright gloomy way.
See, that kind of reminds me of an Aeon. Like Elantris's illumination a bit.
Kind of like the
translucent
plates
is a little weird. Yeah, but like they would have a symbol in it, so it's not just like a block that like radiates a thing. I don't know. Oh, it's weird. Yeah.
It's LEDs, actually. They discovered LEDs.
Yeah. They're very technologically advanced. That's why Harmony couldn't help them. They'd make those LED TVs, and they wouldn't like it.
It says no bulbs.
Yeah, no bulbs.
So there is a detail about the temple that we haven't really talked much about, which is the you had mentioned, Argent, the frozen corpses, right?
Yes.
In the second fake-out room.
Yes.
I find that very interesting because, like, we know that Kelsier's like whole, like, his morality, such as it is, and I use the term loosely, is very centered around people, right? Like, he is loyal to his crew. He loves his crew, and he does good for the good of his crew. And so the thought of him sort of leaving these people there to just rot for his sake is a little bit, I feel like it's out of character, and it's a very interesting sort of detail to me.
He was willing to, like, during the Final Empire, was willing to sacrifice people for a greater good. So I think maybe there's an argument that he wasn't personally close to them, and he didn't feel super terrible about making use of their lives for something that he saw as a greater good. But I do agree that like I don't think he does that sort of thing unless there's a good reason.
I want to posit an idea that
reason.
Yeah. That perhaps the people by the second pedestal are not Sovereign's priests. Or at least I'm almost thinking that they're not necessarily that they are not the original Sovereign's priests. Because here's the thing. So there are a bunch of people. There are satting, Jesus. They are sitting in 4 concentric rings looking up at the light by the fake bands. And not only that, they are in warm clothing and each held a mask in their lap. And so if, like the original priests, if they're like, they were not Southerners, these guys sound like Southerners if they'd have a mask. And like maybe it was like descendants of those priests who intermingled with the Southerners, and there was like a cult thing around the temple. But it is just interesting because even Wax is like, how had word of the key to the door been passed on, right? And so he's
so maybe some Southerners found the temple in the past, and they came there, and they didn't like plan on like. They just like found it, and it was just like this holy place, and they're like, hey, we're gonna like sit around here and like worship or whatever they think they need to do. And maybe the priests were still there, and they're like, hey, these guys have it in hand, like they're gonna keep an eye on the place. And then the priests,
like it's definitely weird.
Ghostblood priests decide, hey, we'll peace out. There's some like devoted worshipers here, and they're kind of watching the place now.
With the line of about like from the lips of a dying priest to a doomed hunter to an airship captain. I wonder whether the hunters found the temple like decades ago and sent some people back to tell the other hunters about it, but a lot of them stayed there and worshipped it or something like that.
But wait! But if there were hunters, they couldn't take their masks off.
Oh, true.
Well, but maybe for some reason they decided to rip them off because that was how it was done. Like it isn't like even if it's fused to your skin, you could still remove it. It would just be quite painful.
I guess, but
I don't think they have to be hunter. Like they could be any Southerners, and then some of them got back, and then that's how the hunters found out.
But it's more because that she got the password from a hunter, so the hunters at least knew the password from a dying priest. So maybe as like they were there decades ago, and some priests were still there, and the hunters said sort of, okay, we'll take over for you or whatever, because the priests were dying. And sent some of their people back to the south, and they passed the secret on among the hunters. And then decades later, this new group of hunters decides to, okay, we'll go back and see or we'll destroy it, because apparently they didn't succeed in whatever they were doing back then.
So the password didn't go priest, hunter, captain, suit.
Yeah.
It could have gone priest, hunter, captain, suit.
God, we're only aware of 2 southern expeditions up to the temple, right? The one with the big hunter ship and Alik's folks. But yeah, the masks on those worshippers does seem to indicate that there may have been a more ancient
it's just
third one that we're unaware of.
Like it's just so weird that they'd let themselves die under there looking at these fake bands, reverential, mask off. That is freaking weird. That is so weird.
Yeah.
Creepy.
So one thing, the fact that they are dressed in warm clothing doesn't necessarily mean much.
It's cold.
This is irrelevant. Yeah, it's cold, but the fact that they have masks in their laps is I think very, very telling. It is possible that what happened was they were there for a period of time. Maybe they were the ones who moved the bands from the upstairs original decoy to like a cavern beneath. Maybe so either they were too afraid of like Kelsier's wrath or whatever to even try to save themselves with the bands as their medallions were running out, or they tried to use them and they didn't work because they were just fake bands, right? And maybe they were like, oh, we're not worthy, or maybe we don't know how to use them, or something like that. And so they just prayed for the sovereign to come back and save them.
I guess. It's just so weird to die sitting in big old rings. You know?
It's weird, but it's also like not unbelievable.
No. Like
that people
with,
would
like
go up
religious
there.
fervor. Yeah, like for sure.
Yeah.
So
it's very much in the realm of, you know, the Indiana Jones, like spooky, like cults.
Yeah,
like,
it's very cult
tonal
vibey.
thing.
Yeah, like just like we're so crazy that we will die here and freeze to death here
on our knees.
Yeah.
So I will throw something out there, and I don't think it is relevant, but I think it is funny in a crackpot kind of way. Them standing or kneeling around the bands reminds me of the little museum thing that Bloody Tan had going. In that they're people in like fixed positions. In Bloody Tan's case, they were mummified and frozen in place. These were literally frozen in place. And so I don't necessarily think there's a connection, but I think there's a possibility that somebody came at some point and like arranged this little tableau.
Could be.
Huh.
I did wonder if it was faked, but
yeah, maybe. I mean, everything else is staged there, so sure, why not? I still just don't understand about the bands themselves and what Kelsier was going for with them. Like, so why create them? Why leave them? Why need to get them again? Like, I just...
What if he thought that he considers them like some kind of weapon or technology that's kind of pretty far advanced, and he didn't really want to give it to them unless they like really needed it. And so he came up with this elaborate thing, and he's going to put them up in this temple and build this whole like thing around them, but hide them good enough that probably nobody's going to find them. And then his priests or whatever are like instructed like at a certain time to let people know. And so like I'm wondering, I guess, if Trell is the trigger. Like there's like events happening on Scadrial now and Kelsier's kind of like, it's time, like they need these now for their own good. And so he kind of like, you flip the switch to have the priests like get the word out.
Okay,
that there's this thing here,
and like
give them the key,
yeah, okay.
And now they're going to go up there and they're going to get it.
Okay,
I don't know why. I guess he couldn't just give it to them at that point.
Yeah, but, like why couldn't Kelsier go back and get the bands and then like here you go? But
could be a worthiness type of thing.
This sounds like, insane.
Kelsier, I don't want to give him. I don't want to give them a super weapon unless they're like ready to wield a super weapon type of thing.
But like none of these tests, like the purpose of the temple is all to just be a decoy. Like there's no tests to like truly pass, right? You know?
Well, you just have to realize that the spearhead was the bands. Like that's kind of
like it's not really a worthiness thing because it's like he wants them to be easily accessed if necessary, but also the priests don't even know
by people who know already where they are, kind of.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's very weird. I would really like, you know, it'd be great some frickin' annotations about this. Like there's so much here just in this temple and its construction and just weird things that I really want to know.
Yeah.
I think the good news is. Go ahead,
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say it's possible that it was just about the story, like because he knows the power of stories and like building up this whole mythology. And so if you get explorers going out there and they come back and they're like, there's this temple with traps, but like I don't know what the end of that looks like, what the usefulness of it is, but it's possible that it's just for that.
It might make them respect the bands more if it's like this thing that they had to obtain and they're this holy item. Maybe that they would treat them more carefully if that's the case.
I guess. It's just weird that he wants it found, but let's build a death trap so tons of people die doing it. And also, when you get through the death traps, you'll find nothing. Have fun. I don't know.
I wonder if this is a weird, like, hiding in plain sight type of thing, where Kelsier doesn't actually want the bands to be found. And the whole test thing is actually something that the priests perpetuate because of ambition, because of misinterpretation of Kelsier's intent, and things like that.
Security through obscurity kind of thing.
Maybe Kelsier just put the bands in the glass thing, and then the priests were like, "No, this isn't good enough."
To be fair, that is more plausible. But like,
maybe Kelsier did come back, and all he did was like, "Okay, we have to come up with some new traps," and then rearrange it to, "Okay, I want it to be a spearhead now."
If he didn't want them to be found, then. Like all of this crap is a great way to get people to find this object, right? And so why all the decoys and stuff when it's just outside? And if he didn't want it found and it's just like, I'm hiding an artifact and I need it eventually, toss it in a random cave, you idiot. Like, so he did want them to be found, but wanted a lot of people die trying to find it?
Maybe this ties in, though, to why the Southerners knew about the bands, like had legends about the bands and have this whole cultural thing of like, oh, it's a test, like we need to go find the bands. And the Northerners didn't, is like he was trying to get them up to the north for some purpose.
That's
I've heard possible.
I've heard that as well.
But then you didn't have to actually like have the bands there.
You
could have just made this.
And that is where it falls apart, is you don't actually have to leave them there.
You bury it somewhere near a landmark that you can identify, but no one else would, and you bury it, and then you just dig it up sometime a century later.
Give him the good old thrill treatment.
Yeah, toss it in the ocean. That's right. Just toss it in the ocean.
Yeah, it is really weird that he actually left them in there, right?
Yeah.
Everything else works. And so the only thing that makes some amount of sense to me is that he did want the bands to be found.
Yeah.
But he wanted them to be found by somebody who was clever, lucky, intelligent enough to realize that all of this is a decoy. And the real bands are like not behind the room of traps, not underneath the whole thing, but elsewhere but still in that temple.
Yeah, it could almost be like, again, like the worthiness test is, and you basically the end goal is to survive the temple, more or less, and solve the riddle or enter the password at the end. So maybe it's some sort of weird. I don't know where I'm exactly going with this, but because Kelsier is the survivor, and so you have to survive the cave, the temple stuff, some stupid stuff like that. And then he also, as you said, Evgeni, he wants somebody clever enough to realize they're actually here and I can still get them, like, as a reward. Sort of. And with what end goal, I have no idea, but yeah.
It's certainly like worth considering the fact that we don't know how much Kelsier has been changed by being a cognitive shadow for the last however many years it was.
He might not be.
Yeah, he might. he might have this intent of like, I need to make sure that everybody survives, and like I need to test people, like a compulsion of some sort because he's a cognitive shadow and has been for so long.
Yeah.
It does make me feel like he intended for them to be found, because if he didn't want anyone but himself to be able to get them, even if he wanted this whole elaborate thing, he could have built the temple and then just put the bands somewhere else and still have he had to have wanted them to be found, which to me just makes me think that it's all about this like cultural, he's trying to do something to manipulate their culture and their mindset about himself or the bands.
What do you think Kelsier thinks about the Khandra now having the bands in that case? If he wanted them to be found, he probably doesn't want the Khandra to get them, especially considering there's a Khandra acid trap to kill specifically to kill Khandra. Reading that is really funny, because Wax doesn't know what it is, but like if you read Era 1, you absolutely know what that acid did, and Milan's just like staring at it, and I'm like, what is it? And just like, nothing. Yeah, well, let's just move on there.
That is a surprisingly somber moment in the whole hijinks.
Yeah. So I just wonder where that's going, like, because this is a very powerful artifact, because it'd be very difficult to create and charge.
It did run out rather quick.
But
well, no, it didn't run out, but like it was. They felt a dip in the fuel reserve.
I got the implication that a lot of it was used. Like it wasn't totally spent, but like regardless, people can charge them. Like if you have this thing.
Although, how do you charge the elementic supply?
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. It's true. Yes.
Maybe you.
How does it even all work? Like,
Hey, we're not supposed to talk about the metallic.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really talk about the bands that much, but it's. I just don't get what. I don't think we're supposed to get what his motivations are here. Like Kelsier's motives with like creating the bands, hiding the bands, wanting the bands to be found, and everything. I don't know.
But like to bring it back around to like the topic of the Southern Scadrians, like specifically, like it really doesn't seem like a coincidence that like we're having this sort of meeting of the worlds right now, like and like people are just now sort of thinking like, where are the Bands of Mourning, and it's sort of like been the impetus right behind this whole thing of them coming together. So I feel like there is definite manipulation happening behind the scenes relating to the bands to try and get the Southerners like scooched up into the North.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
It could serve a dual purpose. He wanted them to have the bands when he wanted them to have them, but he also wanted them to make contact with the North at some point.
Yeah.
So
maybe exactly because after they had contact with the North, he was thinking like, okay, maybe the North won't welcome the Southerners that well or whatever, or like not peacefully, and they would then have the bands as a means of protection.
Yep.
It kind of seemed like the Northerners were actually the ones under threat, though.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, right? Because Alik is like, hey, some of our guys have flown over your basin and gone, hey, like things look really good down there, and we've got these airships, and air superiority is a thing.
But also, it is absolutely like Kelsier to think from an Elemencer's perspective. And like the North is chock full of Elemencers and Metalborn in general, and the South barely has any. So maybe he was thinking that, hey, I will give the South a fighting chance with Metalborn, and all the technological developments from, let's say, the past 200 years are not something he had planned for when he was establishing all of that.
Sure.
And
maybe he wasn't planning for metal bombs. I don't know.
He might not have known that the North wouldn't develop. Like Sazed thought that they would develop more than they did.
No.
Yeah, like Sazed has future sight. Kelsier doesn't. Well, I mean, I guess if you have all 16 parachemical abilities, what does tapping fortune mean? But you know what I mean, right? Like, it's not like a shard, right?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine that he gave the medallions not thinking they would be able to reverse engineer them all, right? But then, like, how does he make the bands? Like, so weird.
This is kind of a twisting topic, but one thing I think would be good to talk before the end would be about the relations between the South and the North moving forward.
Yeah, let's talk about that a bit. What do you think?
I mean, it's sort of self-evident in the way that Brandon has talked about, like a sort of Cold War vibe in Era 3 being part of the background, right?
He talks about a Cold War level of technology.
Yeah. But a Cold War between the North and the South would be pretty tight.
It would be.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think he has specifically just said something about, like spy stuff, happening.
Yeah, I vaguely recall that. Maybe we gotta do a podcast on everything we know about Era 3. Because
we don't know that much.
No, we don't.
That would make a lot of sense to me. I think he's built up some tension between the North and the South, and there's this technological disparity. So that's really interesting, and I could see that going that way. One thing that's really weird is the fact that there's also this civil war situation brewing in the Elendel Basin. And so it's kind of weird to me to imagine, like, how do you resolve both of those? Unless, like, the civil war thing resolves in in Lost Metal, and then, like, all of a sudden we go to Era 3 and now we've got, like, another issue. But part of me wonders if, like, Elendel Basin might, like, split, and then, like, maybe the Southerners will also choose sides, because the Southerners aren't necessarily like this homogenous, like, they're not all on the same page. So I could see, like, a split both ways.
Well, so my thought is that maybe when you have an outside invader, that can certainly lead to a shifting of priority in the outer cities. Like, maybe that would be a motivation to unite rather than go into civil war. That's like, okay, this isn't ideal, but these other guys are, like, really bad for us, maybe.
The thing is, one of the reasons they had the big airship land where it did and in the way it did was because, like, the government of Elendel thought it would be a show of force to the outer cities.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look at our friends. They have an airship.
True.
And so it could easily go the other way, where the outer states are like, oh, Elendel City is making negotiations, plans, communications with these Southerners. We need to strike now before they establish anything.
Especially if you consider that the Set's compounds were in the outer cities, and if the Set's faceless immortals are like, no, we gotta act now, like, that, maybe they are going to rile the tensions up more.
And that is something that I hadn't considered, is this idea that the Set's faceless immortals are going around and sort of influencing matters in the same way. Like, the Kandric clearly have a presence in Elendel, right? Like, they can manipulate the police and, like, the government and the whole thing. And so having that on the other side is very spy versus spy kind of.
That's true, but I don't. Who knows how much Trell stuff's going to be resolved in Lost Metal, right? Like, I think we'll learn. I think we'll get some answers, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that situation's going to be resolved. We're just going to get some answers, and it's going to set up the next phase, and maybe. I don't know.
Just a very quick thought that I just came up with is that maybe the Deniers of Masks are relatively recent development and are also related to Trell.
I mean, there would be no reason why they wouldn't want to influence things down south, right? Especially considering, like, they're clearly aware of the Southerners, and they're like, oh, they're starting to mix. That is dangerous. We gotta go right now. And so maybe the purpose of the Deniers was to prevent that from happening, and maybe like try and just break down the Southerners and
keep
their
things
ability.
Local.
Yeah. Or, like, just, cause a war so they wouldn't like try and travel north, right? Because they got bigger things going on at home.
You could make the argument that the Deniers of Masks, like the idea of denying a cultural thing ties with the idea of autonomy and like
honestly, that's kind of true. Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah. And it'd be hilarious if Kelsier realized that these people are doing that, and those faceless immortals are like, well, we don't want them going north. And Kelsier's like, no. Let's really make the bands go up there, and let's really make sure they get there. Let's send some priests over there just to really screw them over. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's Kelsier's motivation here, just to like, no, there is a prize. Please come up here, because that will screw over these other guys' plan.
Yeah.
Which is a very Kelsier thing to do.
It really would, wouldn't it? I'm so interested to see how things develop, but I like the Denier of Mask idea. I like and connecting it with Trell a bit. I'm worried because, will those faceless immortals just like try and just kill a bunch of Southerners now? Like that doesn't seem like it's gonna be great.
I this is tangential to the subject of this episode, but I think the set's faceless immortals are gonna think bigger than that.
Yeah, they're gonna
like
just
they want to.
The planet.
They want to exterminate life on the planet. They don't want to do small stuff. So, metal bombs might be the way to go. Actually,
that is.
You take the door. The door between the realms. I don't know. Sorry. Had to make it one last door joke. But, I don't know. I'm very interested to see how things progress, because there's at the end of Bands, it's like, oh man, there's a lot of different ways this could go, and I'm excited. Excited to see what's next.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how much Southern stuff we'll get in Lost Metal.
How much Kelsier stuff, how much South stuff. Some Trell stuff, clearly.
Looking back, I was surprised as I was, preparing for this episode. I was surprised at like how very little of the Southern like content like we actually got. It's just the last half of Bands of Mourning, really. Like in my mind, it's all part and parcel of Era 2, but like we're just getting into it.
Yeah. And I would love to see some Southern viewpoints Era 3. Like I imagine that must occur there, right?
Alex and Miras's children.
Yeah. I mean, but like you could easily have a thing where I love stories, kind of like Elantris, where you have like POVs from two opposing perspectives, and like you could have some Northerner viewpoints, you could have some Southerner viewpoints, and like that could. He probably wouldn't want to do the same thing for Era 4 if it's like Scadrial versus Roshar, but like would be cool. Would be really cool though.
Era 4 is far away.
It is very far away. We'll be very, very old, and we'll be like, oh, that's really cool. We're not hip with the kids at all, and none of the kids will be interested in what we're like. And it's like, it's really good though.
We'll be reading about Hoyt doing wanky things on Scadrial and be like, yeet!
Our podcasts recapping what we know on a subject will take like 2/3 of the actual podcast just to try and explain all the things that have happened. Yeah.
So remember that prophecy in Era 1 about
Discord. You're here. All right, everyone. I think it is time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Da, da, da.
This character is from Roshar.
Menace. Tien.
Tom.
Braze.
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Caw. Welcome to Who's That Cosmere Character, the game show where you send in 5 clues and a character to wtcc at 17shard.com. And each clue, these people have a chance to guess who's that Cosmere character. All right, this first one is sent in by Physics Girl. Awesome. And clue 1, this character is in a relationship.
What is a relationship?
Like
Every time.
romantic, or are you saying this person has spiritual connections to other people?
Oh,
Navani.
it's not Navani.
Uncle Kayan.
Oh no, it's not Uncle Kayan.
I have never been able to remember the names of these characters,
Uh-huh.
and it's been a decade.
Okay.
The Argent from the Way of Kings interlude, who cooks.
Okay. Gotcha. I understand who. Yeah, I honestly forget who's who as well. But
Jarenid's
no,
partner.
yeah. Like it's a Sashir and Jarenid, yeah. But no, it's not. It's not either.
Okay.
But nice guess. I like it.
Is it Siri?
It's not Siri. I like that too. Clue 2. This character has moved recently.
Serini.
It's not Serena. It's true. That's a good one. That's a good guess. Nice.
Yeah.
It's true. Definitely qualifies as matching that
Hasina.
guess. No, it's not Hasina. That's also a good guess. I like it.
The recently thing is throwing me off, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it means in the context of the book. Like the last book we saw.
Yeah.
Yes. Indeed.
Oh yeah, I guess Hasina would qualify then. Okay.
Yeah, Hasina totally qualifies.
Yeah.
Is it
I was-
Renette? I feel like there was something
Is
about Renette.
Renette. Oh,
Wow.
wow. Nice.
Yep.
Nailed it. Clue 3, this character gets annoyed easily. Clue 4, this character is often in need of a bath. And clue 5, this character is an inventor. Though, to be fair, Wayne's POV on Renette, don't necessarily believe clue 4. That's just Wayne being potentially very biased. But yeah, it is Renette. Nice. Yeah.
Those are good clues.
Yeah.
When did she move?
Yeah.
Oh, she moved to Ellen though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this next one is sent in from Lotus. On
Oh, hi,
Discord.
Lotus.
Hello.
Ooh.
Clue 1.
My most recent arch nemesis.
Which will not
Which
be recent
will
when this
not
comes
be-
out. Not remotely recent. Clue 1. This character is dead. Gotta do the
I wanna
classic, right?
Sure blood.
yeah, I'm gonna.
Who? Marvin?
Sure blood.
It's not sure. Gotta name the horses, right?
Yep.
I will keep it to Mistborn and go with Bleeder.
Ooh, it's not Bleeder. I like it though.
Hrathen.
It's not Hrathen.
In honor of the Rhythm of War spoiler period ending, I'm going to say, is it Tef?
It's not Teft. Yeah. Also, that will be many months ago at this stage. Okay.
The spoiler period that ended last year.
It did. Yes. Clue 2. This character is not from Roshar. Ooh.
Tanavest.
It's not Tanavast. I like that too, though.
Clever. Is it Yezrian?
Damn, dude, you're just nailing it.
Wow.
Damn. Wow, we got to get you on a Who's That Cosmere character episode to kick Ian's ass.
It was Argent that got me on the line of thinking, though.
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with
Like that it's a fake out that they're not from Roshar.
Yeah.
Fake us
Nice.
away
Yeah.
from Stormlight characters.
Yeah, nice.
I can't believe you're
Good one,
guessing
Lotus.
these without fortune or access to the spiritual realm.
Yeah, I know. Damn, man.
How do you know he doesn't?
It's 100% Who's That Cosmic character win rate. Payden over here. All right, clue 3, this character is male. Clue 4, this character has a daughter. And clue 5, this character was killed by Moash. So it's like, I like all those because it's like, there's a misdirect, but like, I always like by clue 5 where it's like obvious and then rather than just like clue 5, you're still totally confused. So I don't know, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it when that like IDs. Although killed by Moash, that is a lot of people, but only Ezreal fixed those clues, I think.
Not that many.
Not that many. Maybe some more.
It's just critical ones.
Just a few. Awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed this really long episode, but there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot that we don't know. So I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, by the way, there was, at least of the time of this recording, there was no patron submission of Who's That Cosmic Character priority queue. So, if you back us on Patreon, you can get it sent. Granted, we have been recording so much in the last month and a half, so yeah. But you can back us on Patreon if you want. And you can find us at 70char.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube. You can leave us a review on iTunes, support us on Patreon, as I just said, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Caw.